Real Chat episode 22, The Terminator.
In this city, under cover of darkness, someone is stalking Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor?
Yes.
Sarah Connor, 35, brutally shot to death in her home.
You're dead, honey.
Late-breaking news.
What's this? Dead girl, too. Sarah Louise Connor. Is this right?
Of course, we'll have more on this late-breaking story as it comes in.
She doesn't know why, but it's her he's after.
Did you reach the next girl yet? No, I keep getting an answer machine.
Pick up if you're there. I'm really scared. I think that there's somebody after me.
And no one can help her, except for one man.
I'm Reese. It's a sign to protect you. You've been targeted for termination.
This isn't true. How could that man just get up after you did?
It's not a man. A machine. Terminator. Underneath, it's a hyperalloy combat chassis. Microprocessor controlled. Fully armored. Very tough. But outside, it's living human tissue.
They cannot make things like that yet.
Not yet. Not for about 40 years.
Are you saying it's from the future?
They came to fight for the one woman who could save their future.
And this computer thinks it can win by killing the mother of its enemy.
One came to protect her.
I came across time for you, Sarah.
The other to kill her. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator. Inhuman. Relentless. Unstoppable. He has only one purpose: murder.
Can you stop it?
I don't know.
And now Sarah Connor's world has become a battlefield, with her at ground zero and the Terminator closing in. An adventure unlike anything you've ever seen before. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator.
The machines arose from the ashes of the nuclear fire. Their war to exterminate mankind had raged for decades, but the final battle would not be fought in the future. It would be fought here in our present tonight. Everybody, welcome to episode 22 of Real Chat, a podcast that promises week in, week out, the real world as we know it. Today we're looking at director James Cameron's low-budget, gritty 1984 sleeper hit, The Terminator. Chapter 1 in a hugely successful science fiction franchise that spawned 3 big-budget sequels, with a 4th one on the way, and a short-lived, slightly underrated 2-season television series.
There's only one sequel.
You've said this numerous times.
There's only one sequel. Well,
Yes.
Terminator 2, that's it. And then,
you know what? Good answer.
And then there's no other films.
My name's Adam Stolfo, and there's obviously no secret here on Real Chat, but I'm a massive fan of director James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this film. I also go against the consensus and think that this first film actually works perfectly as a whole and is the best film in this series. I'm joined here as usual by co-host Brose Avard. Brose, T1 or T2?
Well, there is no T1. There's The Terminator. And then there's Terminator 2.
He's being very specific today.
I love this film. What I really love about Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, or The Terminator and Terminator 2, is they're almost two different films. This is a really beautifully crafted, low-budget, kind of sci-fi action film, genre-busting, and just really nice, a lot of happy coincidences that happen for this film to be so good. And then James Cameron, unlike George Lucas, got a budget and didn't fuck it for everyone. So the first two films, I think that's the key to having a really good franchise or a good sequel, is just take the film in a different direction when you do the second one. I haven't watched the second one in about 15 years, and I can't wait to watch it now that I've seen The Terminator, but let's get through this one first.
And welcome back, Stuart Wilson. Stuart, T1 or T2?
T1.
Okay.
I'm actually thinking that That isn't the consensus. Well, I mean, when we were kids, and this film came out when I was 12, 13. Terminator 2 came out when I was 12, 13. The coolest film ever, and everyone thought it was better than the original. But I think as we aged and became a lot more sensible, we realized that actually the first one's the best.
There you go. And also joining us today, Mr. Michael Hadjion.
Hello, how's it going?
Welcome back,
The
Michael.
return
Yep.
of Michael Hadjion. He said he'd be back. We didn't believe him.
I'm back, baby.
Didn't believe
Michael,
him.
T1 or T2?
I'm going to go against the grain here and say T2 for me, actually. Look, every time I see T2, and, it might be a few years between watchings, but it is an absolutely fantastic film and one of the all-time great sequels. I mean, it's essentially a remake of the first one, don't get me wrong. It's essentially James Cameron's got more experience, the cast is more experienced, they've got the technology, they've got the money, they've got the capability to make a better film, and I think it does pit T1. That being said, I love this movie and excited to talk about it today.
We obviously love this movie, Michael, because this is the 18-year anniversary this year of something we did in high school.
That's right.
So you want to give a little bit of an insight into what that was?
We'll be putting that up on the Twitter.
Yes.
No doubt.
We certainly will.
I guess going back even further than that, I think the very first time, Adam, that you saw this film might have been at a sleepover at my house. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and just for those keeping track at home, Adam and Michael still have sleepovers.
Yeah, I know. We still go over to my parents' house and fold out the card table and have chicken schnitzel in front of the TV. And
they prefer to call them two boys, one sleeping bag. But,
hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
I didn't say there was.
It probably would have been 1994 that I think, Adam, that you watched this film for the very first time.
Is that the first time you saw The Terminator? 94?
Yes. Yeah, it was
almost 10 years later.
Definitely after T2.
And after T2.
Definitely.
Wow. So that begs the question. I
definitely saw T2 first.
That begs the question. T1 or T2, Adam?
T1.
Wow, without question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 94, first time we watched it, we actually then made a very short film about this, which would have been about a 2-minute film in the rumpus room at my parents' house, which was this shocking, terrible film. I wonder if it's still on VHS somewhere at my folks' place. Anyway, flashing forward a bit to 19...
You've got to dig that up.
Yeah,
that exists.
Yeah,
you definitely have that.
We've got to dig that up for the Real Chat fans.
You must still have that.
In fact,
somewhere.
The opening sequence of the film was just a zoom in on the VHS cover of Terminator 1.
Serious?
It was the night after we watched it and rented it from Video Busters.
So basically, it's like Be Kind Rewind.
Yeah.
Like,
pretty much.
How old were you? About 13, 14?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So then flashing forward to 1997 when we were in year 11, everyone in year 11 had to do a communications project where we had to do something worthwhile and communicate it to a bunch of people. A lot of people made crappy websites because this was back in the sort of heyday of the internet, and that was pretty much what most people did. But we took it upon ourselves to essentially remake The Terminator. We made would have been a 50-minute film?
50 minutes, yeah.
It's 50 minutes. I've just seen what's on YouTube at the moment.
50 minutes. Well, actually, we edited it down to about 40.
Yeah, and we
What I saw was only about 5 minutes, though. Is there a shorter?
Just a trailer.
Is there
a trailer?
God, you guys did a trailer for your 40-minute Terminator homage.
We did.
It was fantastic. I mean, Adam spent most of the classes at school writing the script for this movie, which is pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the best bits of Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. And, we took many, nights
every Friday night.
Yeah, every Friday night we were over at Adam's place in Surrey Hills, his parents' house, filming this movie, and then we showed it to the whole class at the end of the year, and pretty much got their feedback on it. But it was an incredible experience.
What was the feedback? What was your Rotten Tomatoes review?
Way too generous.
Way too generous.
That's right. That's pretty much it, isn't it?
Wow,
that's the story.
Incredible.
Yeah,
that is fantastic.
So this is an episode of our Vintage Vault retrospective series, a conscious effort to try and select the shows with something of relevance to the present, and with a fifth film in this popular franchise, Terminator Genisys, released on the 1st of July this year, we figured it was a good opportunity to look back in depth at what's made this mega franchise so popular over the last 31 years. Now, Terminator Genisys seems to be treading on dangerous ground and seems to be going all back to the Future Part 2 on the franchise, using the time travel motifs to reshape the events of this film and its sequels. The reception to the theatrical trailers has been lukewarm at best, and the general feeling is it's not showing us anything that we haven't seen before, and also, in my opinion, showing us too much, such as the origins of this first film and things that work better in implication more so than what we are shown directly. How do you feel about this film? Are you excited about it at all?
No. But, I mean, I don't think I was I excited for Terminator 3? I'm trying to remember.
Was anyone?
I think I was excited, but then it was just complete letdown.
Salvation I wasn't that excited about, and it's just as well. I wasn't excited because I wasn't disappointed in that regard. This one, yeah, I'll see it. I'm worried that they need to make the universe a bit bigger, is my problem with Terminator. Maybe it's James Cameron's fault, because his second film retread the same ground that the first film did. That every other film has done the same thing.
I wouldn't exactly say it's his fault in the sense that he told his story and walked away from the franchise. So
I suppose, but then when you think of how he approached Aliens and he made a completely different, tonally different film, which then allowed the rest of the Alien films to be completely different, one after the other. Whereas Terminator 2 is remarkably similar to the first Terminator. And that kind of set a precedent, I guess. By that stage, everyone's too scared to do something drastically different. Salvation was close to being different, but really...
failed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And what about you, Michael? Terminator Genisys? Because I know you've seen the previous 4.
Yeah, look...
There's 4?
Yeah. There are 4 Terminator movies.
Or did you just watch the Terminator and T2 twice each? Like, there's 4.
Yeah, look.
That's insane.
Yeah, yes. I'm certainly of the opinion it's T1 and T2. That's a closed loop. That's
your franchise cutoff point.
That is my franchise cutoff point. Really not excited at all about this new installment. Not even sure if I'm going to see it. I think it might go the way of the Crystal Skull for me. I think I might try to get through life without ever seeing this film. I'm sure if I wait long enough, everyone will tell me it's terrible and I won't need to see it. So, yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
What about you, Brose?
I am going to hide under my doona in my bed until it disappears and I can pretend it never existed. But that's not the case. I'm going to have to watch it for the fucking podcast, aren't I? So,
yes.
And I'm going to have to watch the third and fourth ones.
And the TV series, all 2 seasons.
Well, the TV series I'm excited about because I've heard such great things and it's been on my watch list for a while. But
there's also more films on the way. If this one's a financial success.
There were more films on the way after Salvation too, but they didn't appear really,
failed.
did they? Yeah.
This will be a success, won't it? Like, it's Schwarzenegger's back, and isn't there enough momentum for this film for it to make it? It'll make some money, won't it? You don't need much to make money now.
It would go into profit. I mean, haven't they all gone into profit? I think
I'd say they all have.
I'd like to say, at least they've got a good cast lined up, but they did for Salvation too, and that didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So. Who knows?
I mean, we were all hopeful with Christian Bale, and we thought, this is going to be a good movie, but
it's possibly his worst performance ever.
Agreed. So it all began with the mission to make the definitive robot story. So what are some of your initial thoughts on this first one, guys? It is now 31 years old.
Oh, look, this is really, for me, one of the definitive sci-fi action thrillers. It's really, I guess, shaped the sort of films that I like to see. I've probably seen this movie, 40 or 50 times, I would add a guess, in my life. It's one of the first films that I can think of that really paints Los Angeles as this really disgusting, horrible place. It's usually a place that's quite glamorized. You sort of think of, shows like Entourage, and I'm sure a lot of movies show the glamour or show a bit of trendiness to it, but this is it's a disgusting place, and it's really got a stylized look to it. Look, there's a lot of factors of this film that we'll talk about, that I love. But really, really big fan of it.
It's an interesting film to look at in terms of what Michael was just saying, in terms of the history of downtown LA. So I don't know if people are overly familiar with the landscape of Los Angeles, but there is Hollywood, which is a few kilometres from downtown LA. And downtown LA is like Melbourne. It's like any CBD kind of area. There's the high-rise buildings, and there's the grid-like streets and everything you expect to see in New York or Chicago or Melbourne or whatever. But up until very recently, it was a very desolate area. They kind of, when Hollywood was built and the movie business started to really peak, kind of more so in the classic Hollywood period, kind of in the 50s, there was a big withdrawal away from downtown LA, and it became a wasteland, and it became a lot of high criminal activity. And they talk about that in the making of this, that they were shooting stuff in downtown LA, literally risking real injury or crime to the production because it was a violent area.
Yeah.
But this film is really good because it does kind of show you that part of. And I've been to downtown LA, and even in broad daylight, it's not the most welcoming place in the world. It does feel a bit shifty and a bit dodgy, and the footpaths aren't particularly well.
And it's still this way
kept.
To this day, is it?
Exactly, yeah. And it's getting better and better. People are moving back. So if you see the film 500 Days of Summer, I'm not sure if you've seen that, but the main character, the protagonist in that, lives in downtown LA, and that's part of the new kind of rebirth of downtown LA, but that's quite recently. So this film captures that moment of LA that, I guess, much like New York, some New York films shot in the 70s will give you a sense of that 70s New York. This film is quite good at giving you the idea of what, to me, it's confusing. and it is to probably any Australian that goes to America, to go to downtown LA, because it is a beautiful city downtown. There's Art Deco buildings, there's buildings obviously from the 50s and 60s, there's spectacular architecture down there. It's a vibrant looking city from the outside, but once you get there, it is quite a desolate space, and perfect for the setting of this film, and they've used it really well and chosen those locations really carefully.
For me, this film epitomises what we've been discussing on Real Chat a lot recently, which is that with limitation comes creativity. This film shows me everything that I want to see. Even when James Cameron probably doesn't have the budget to fully realise these visions, everything you see, just enough of the future, you see just enough of the Terminator character, and all the stuff that you don't see, which it looks like something like Terminator Genisys might show us, it's good. You create it up here.
It's that idea of the best art.
To my head,
the best. It's that idea that the best art is from limitation and from restriction rather than having everything you need. And you're absolutely right. It's what Cameron didn't have that is implied that makes this such a powerful film, which he managed to maintain for the sequel, but more on that next time.
What about yourself, Stuart?
It's interesting talking about LA, because I think it was you the other day, Adam, that talked about Nightcrawler putting you in mind of the original Terminator, because so much of it happens in LA at night.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's a similar kind of vibe. I do like that this film is a bit more of a horror movie than the sequel.
Hugely.
Yeah, so I suppose despite saying that 2 was a remake of 1, there is that edge that is missing from the sequel, I guess, and I quite enjoy that. I also enjoy the fact that, like all 80s action movies, there has to be a scene in a neon-drenched nightclub.
Oh, always.
So...
What a great scene as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, The Terminator is a Hemdale film, Pacific Western, Euro film funding and Cinema 84 release. It was released on the 26th of October 1984 in the US and the 20th of December 1984 in Australia. It was shot, obviously we've spoken a great deal already about Los Angeles, California. That's where the entire film was shot, with a budget of only an estimated $6.4 million. Now, if we compare this to our very first episode, Brose, Ghostbusters... This is peanuts in comparison.
Yeah, Ghostbusters is what, 25?
Same year.
25 million,
yep.
6.4, much lower.
And it grossed 78.4 million worldwide, so it was actually, quite the hit in comparison to its budget. And it did connect with audiences, but it connected with the ones that actually went to see it. Now, Orion Pictures were apparently unwilling to fully market it. And I think this film found its audience in the advent of VHS. I think that's where it became very, very popular.
Okay, so it was quite a late sort of bloomer. It didn't actually pick it up at the box office,
well,
is what you're saying.
78.4 from a $6.4 million budget is quite a hit.
It's sensational. It's over 10 times.
Yeah.
Over 10 times its budget.
But it's not that much in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But this film didn't have the marketing, and you couldn't sell it with things like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he was not Arnold Schwarzenegger until this film.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't sell it with James Cameron. He was an unknown. He'd done a movie called Piranha 2, which he didn't even fully direct, by the way.
Yeah, he's since disowned.
He since disowned it. So, Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn weren't big names, so... People just thought it was this grungy, down and dirty exploitation pick or something, Like it didn't have any legacy whatsoever. So obviously this film's directed by James Cameron. James Francis Cameron is a Canadian filmmaker, inventor, engineer, and deep sea explorer who has directed the 2 biggest box office films of all time. He landed his first professional film job as art director, miniature set builder, and process projection supervisor on Roger Corman's Battle Beyond the Stars. And then he debuted as director with Piranha 2: The Spawning the following year. In 1994, he wrote and directed this film, The Terminator, and after this came a string of successful science fiction action films such as Aliens, The Abyss, and Terminator 2: Judgment Day, where he found further critical acclaim for his use of CGI special effects. After his film True Lies, Cameron took on the biggest film at the time, Titanic, which earned him Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Director, and Film Editing. After Titanic, Cameron began a project that took almost 10 years to make, his science fiction epic Avatar, for which he received nominations for the same 3 Academy Awards. In the time between making Titanic and Avatar, Cameron spent several years creating many documentary films, specifically underwater documentaries, and co-developed the digital 3D fusion camera system. Described by a biographer as part scientist and part artist, Cameron has also contributed to underwater filming and remote vehicle technologies. On March 26, 2012, Cameron reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest part in the ocean, in the Deep Sea Challenger submersible, which is a documentary that we've both recently seen, Michael. Yep. So like we said, he's won 3 Academy Awards for Titanic, and in total, Cameron's directorial efforts have grossed approximately $6 billion worldwide.
It's epic.
Cameron's Titanic and Avatar are the two highest-grossing films of all time at $2.19 billion and $2.78 billion, respectively. In March 2011, he was named Hollywood's top earner by Vanity Fair with estimated 2010 earnings of $257 million.
Wow.
Jeepers.
Yeah. In 1990, Cameron also formed his own production company, Lightstorm Entertainment, which actually has a link to this film. The Lightstorm that the Terminator and Reese actually appear in is where the name of his production company came from. Yeah. So what do you guys think of James Cameron? I mean, he's arguably one of the biggest directors of all time when you have got some of the credits that he's got. My favourite movies of his are his earliest work, including this film that we're looking at.
Yep.
But his biggest movie is obviously his most recent work. So
yeah,
Cameron.
Avatar I don't rate at all. So technically it's fantastic. Visually it's splendid, but the script it's just ironic that the biggest grossing film of all time arguably has one of the worst scripts ever written.
It's not ironic.
It's not ironic.
It's got very, very, very broad appeal, which is why it's so bland. Yeah. I mean,
really?
as good as Titanic, I really enjoy it. It's much better than Avatar, but it's a really, really simple story. And he's realised
I've got no problem with simple stories, but
but
Avatar's badly written. It's not just a bad script; it's clunky and it's average. It's like something that a screenwriting student would write. It's like the script wasn't important, which it obviously wasn't.
It feels like it was only the next step after Titanic for me. I mean, Titanic was a
step down,
pretty simple story.
into blandness and broadness.
Yeah, the same trajectory.
I've got no problem with broad films, but I don't know, Avatar.
What about Cameron's career as a whole then? Because he's obviously, these newer ones are the ones that get focused on because they're his most successful films. But as I said before, my two favourite Cameron films are The Terminator and Aliens. And Aliens was a sequel to a successful first film as well. So, yeah, just overall thoughts on Cameron's career.
Well, I guess, I'm touching on, T1, T2, Aliens, look, they're three of my favourite films. They're just, really define what I love about sci-fi action as a genre. They're fantastic. And he's all over those films. He's obviously, they're passion pieces for him. He's written and directed, obviously, T1 and T2, and just obviously shows through his work. He's got very strong themes through those three films. Like, he develops these likeable, vulnerable characters, and also got very strong female characters through all those films, and very much likes to touch on maternal instincts. Obviously, you got Sarah Connor in the T1 and T2, and then Ripley. Obviously, those maternal instincts more touched upon in Aliens, with Newt and the themes in that film. Also, I guess specifically about T1, he's got these very strong visual themes. Like the very first scene of T1, you see that future scene. You see that litter of human skulls getting crushed by the track of that the hunter-killer, that big sort of tank-like thing. And it immediately sums up what the whole movie's about. This movie is about technology destroying mankind. And then he plays on those themes through his films. And, later in the film, you've got the cop car crushing over that little toy truck when the Terminator arrives at the first Sarah Connor house. And then you've got the Terminator crushing the set of headphones when he murders Sarah's roommate. So those little themes tie back to that very first shot in the film. They develop sort of a link through the film, and it sort of ties you back to that concept, and he does that really well. So he's certainly a very skilled director. But then I guess looking at his later work, I'm not an Avatar fanboy, and I really hated True Lies. It's sort of, to me, one of the most despicable films.
That's harsh.
I really, really
How can you hate that film?
movie.
What's there to hate about that film?
It's just unoriginal and bravado bullshit. I
have a problem with True Lies too.
Different reasons though, right, Stu?
It's quite an offensive film to me.
Yes.
But Stu,
offensive? Wow.
Yeah.
But Stu, what is your favourite James Cameron film?
It's The Abyss.
Yeah.
Great
Which,
film as well.
interestingly, he certainly had the budget for, and kind of flubbed it in terms of it didn't do that well. So it's interesting he managed to claw his way back, and then again was risking everything for Titanic, but thankfully it paid off, because surely if that had failed, he'd be out in his ass.
If that had sunk at the box office.
That's pretty much what they were predicting at the time.
Just for those that are following and listen to the Lost World episode, I still haven't seen Titanic, as much as that might surprise, confuse, and upset people.
Unbelievable.
But at the time, I was easily quoted as saying that's I don't need to spend that much time in a cinema watching a 2.5 hour long bore. So
Do you know? How did you know it was going to be boring?
Because the ship doesn't sink till the last half hour, and that's all I want to see. So,
did you know that?
I've since seen
Did
that.
you know it wasn't going to sink for the last?
I'm just not interested.
Okay.
Plus, Celine Dion isn't getting me into a cinema ever, so it just hasn't happened, and it'll happen for real, chat.
It will. You'll see these movies.
The sacrifices I make for you people.
I know.
Seeing these films, I don't ever want to see.
The thing is that like when Brose does watch Titanic, I reckon he'll actually quite like it.
Yeah, I think he will.
The big question is, will he watch the version with the incorrect stars or the version with the correct stars? Who knows?
I don't know. I've seen that Britney Spears film clip where they refer to the necklace from Titanic. It's a good film clip.
Yeah, that's all you need to know, really.
Yeah, cool. Done. That was taken far too seriously. Yeah, that's all you need. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, good point, Stuart.
Our apologies. That's good.
James Cameron wrote this film along with producer Gail Ann Hurd, although that's not entirely correct by my sources. I actually heard that she got a writing credit based on the deal to actually get this film made. Obviously, Gail Ann Hurd's the producer of the film. After completing a screenplay for The Terminator, Cameron decided to sell it so that he could direct the movie. However, the production companies he contacted while expressing interest in the project were unwilling to let a largely inexperienced feature film director make the movie. Finally, Cameron found a company called Hemdale Pictures, which was willing to let him direct. Gail Ann Hurd, who had started her own production company, Pacific Western Productions, had previously worked with Cameron in Roger Corman's company and agreed to buy Cameron's screenplay for $1 on the condition that Cameron direct the film. Hurd was signed on as producer, and Cameron finally got his first break as a director. And in their personal life as well, Hurd and Cameron were married from 1985 to 1989. Only his second of 5 marriages.
Wow.
So,
top bloke, eh?
Yes.
How many of the women that he's married have been involved with films that he's made?
Yeah, well, there was definitely not his first one, but Gail Ann Hurd was then his second one, and then Catherine Bigelow was the third. So obviously she's a Academy Award-winning director.
Yeah. She was a screenwriter as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And Linda Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Susie Amos from Titanic.
Oh yeah.
And he's got that one right apparently because they've been together for nearly 20 years.
But for a big chunk of that time, he spent his time in this part of the world doing other things. So I guess that helps too.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not implying that he was cheating. I just mean I'm implying
the secret to a healthy marriage, people.
Yeah, stay away from the past.
Get to the deepest trench in the world.
Yeah.
11 kilometres under the surface.
We're never having James Cameron on this show, are we? Even if it came up, he'd have a listen to this episode and be right. That's it.
Yeah.
Was there a chance?
You never know. Okay. He might have been, along with Apple and Universal.
As long as we don't say anything bad about 20th Century Fox, Bruce, we'll be right.
Exactly.
All right?
We'll be fine. We'll be all right.
Okay. James Cameron's directing, gets a lot of coverage, but one of his downfalls often, and I guess it comes back to Titanic and Avatar, is that his writing isn't so great. What about on this one?
No, his writing's good on this. I honestly, I don't think he's getting lazy. I just think he's been careful recently because some of his earlier films had some really interesting stuff, and The Abyss, I think, is one of his best screenplays. I really think that's a really good film, as opposed to a fun genre film, which I consider most of his films.
Do you think that he was hurt by the failure of Abyss? Do you think that's tempered his...
well, so he played it safe. Exactly. Let's do some star-crossed lovers and some cool visual effects.
Well, the Abyss,
that's all he needs.
The Abyss was the passion project.
Yeah, well, how is it his passion project?
Well, because you look at his body of work, they're all a lot safer than just one that he came up with completely by himself, except for like Terminator, I guess.
Yeah.
Because everything else is inspired by something. And I guess Avatar's the next one in line.
Yeah, I mean, do we count Rambo as well? First Blood Part 2?
Stallone did do a massive rewrite on that.
Okay. Because it is pretty similar to Aliens in some ways.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. And they were both written at exactly the same time as well. Yeah, so anything else about Cameron's writing?
Does Stallone have dialogue in Rambo? Or?
In Rambo, he does, yeah.
Does he? Dialogue?
Yeah, as opposed to First Blood, yes.
Yeah, right, just making noises.
No, he has the big speech at the end of First Blood. And the shoe shine box, and pieces of him all over me.
That's true. That's true.
That's pretty much it.
Does anyone else have anything else to say about Cameron's writing of the Terminator?
In terms of his script, I think Cameron is definitely one of those directors that is more of a visualist than he is about the written world. He's about constructing a story that he can create these amazing visuals for. And I guess one of the great things about, especially this film as well, right at the start of his career, is that he created a visual landscape that he could then go and paint with his camera. And he does a really good job at linking the visuals with the story, and nothing seems nothing's wasted and nothing's just there for the sake of it. Everything's tied in really well with his locations, and the characters are drawn to fit that location, and you get the feeling that's right at the scripting stage. That's something he's thinking about the whole time, and I think it comes across in his film. So, and that's definitely true for something like Avatar, and then obviously Titanic, and all the way through. So it's definitely, he's a very visual director, and I think his screenwriting reflects that.
The cinematographer of this film is Adam Greenberg. Normally I would cross to Andrew here, so but
Andrew is not here. Get well soon, mate.
Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think of the visual style of this film? Adam Greenberg did do Terminator 2 as well, 7 years later.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as we touched on before, this film's got a very dark, gritty, dirty look, and that carries through the whole film. And yeah, I think it looks great. Having seen it recently for the first time on Blu-ray, and it looked beautiful, but they hadn't sort of prettied it up too much. It still has that gritty, dirty look to it, and yeah, I really love it.
I was thinking that it's the kind of film that was good to watch on, very used video cassette.
Yeah.
That scratchy, grimy quality worked quite well. And I was worried that maybe they'd clean it up too much and suddenly becomes polished in this other film.
Yeah, for sure. Like, for example, I don't know if you sort of saw The Predator, which got released, maybe a year or so ago on Blu-ray, and they prettied it up too much, and it's not grainy anymore. Everyone looks like they're made of wax, and they're sort of it's lost its sort of gritty look, which was part of the film. But Terminator has still got that.
That's that is a big problem with Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few Blu-ray releases where they've just done too much work on it and cleaned it up too much, and you lose the whole visual style.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about shooting on film, is that you can get it a bit dirtier, and you can get it a bit muddier, or get it a bit grainier, or whatever you want to do to it. And that is an important part of the visual style of the film, and then if they clean it up too much, then you lose the whole thing.
Yeah, and just another aspect of the cinematography as well. I guess the choreography of the car chase scenes, I really appreciated on the recent watching of it. There's some really fantastic car chases in this movie. There's the big chase through the garage, and then later in the movie there's that motorcycle chase, and then the tanker chase at the end. They're really well shot scenes. It's really fantastic.
What's great about the cinematography, I think, is that there's a real economy in the way it's been shot, and I think because it was such a low budget film, they only had so many cars they could crash. They only had so much time in it at each location, and everything's just really well shot. And you get that feeling that because of the speed they were shooting things at, and the energy that they had behind the camera, that really comes across on camera. We've just looked at Mad Max, and it has that similar kind of energy where they're just that energy behind the camera to make things happen, and make them happen first time or second time only because of the budget constraints. Really is they're impactful on camera as well. So yeah, it's really well shot.
The most important hue in this film, and also a lot of Cameron's follow-up movies, is this blue hue.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the films, I'm thinking Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2, even parts of True Lies, and Titanic even. Even Avatar, I've just gone through his whole list. This blue colour is the very first image that you actually see in this film, and it's used throughout to depict the post-apocalyptic future. And this makes orange important in contrast as well. In several fire-lit scenes, the fire seems to take on a characteristic of hope, particularly in one of the future flashbacks where there's just a little flame burning inside a broken out TV.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
When you said blue and orange, though, I was instantly thinking of all those movie posters everyone complains about from the early 2000s onwards, where every single movie poster that came out was teal and orange, technically. The idea being that they're opposite ends of the colour spectrum and they really pop from a distance.
Yeah.
There's been quite a few complaints that there are so many films that got made in the last decade and a half that went with those colours. So in that regard, it was kind of ahead of the curve a bit. It's the kind of thing that frustrates a lot of people now, but yeah, it certainly works, and I guess particularly works when your budget's not so big. You focus on what's important.
So let's talk about the iconic cast from the Terminator, starting with the man himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays the Terminator. It's very, very well known. We can go across the stories about who was going to be the Terminator and how the character was going to be very different. Lance Henriksen was obviously... Cameron did drawings of Lance Henriksen, and Henriksen was obviously going to be more of a man that can blend into a crowd. Obviously, when you cast a 6'2" Austrian bodybuilder,
he was the complete opposite of blending into the crowd. Is the accent, the body,
the character changed completely.
Yeah, he completely flipped.
But he's in disguise. He puts those glasses and the jacket on. Just like any regular Joe.
It could be any guy. Poor Lance Henriksen, though. Jeez. Because they auditioned him and he thought the role was his, and then the Schwarzenegger thing comes up and...
He got a good role in Aliens.
True.
Yeah,
It's all right.
but not in this film.
As a robot as well.
Not in this film, no.
This film he plays a jerk, an unlikable jerk.
Exactly. Who gets
And he dies.
killed off, in one of the key scenes. So.
It's interesting, a recent film, It Follows, which is a horror film that I've been raving about recently.
Yep, love it.
Yeah, there you go. It does toy with the idea of an ordinary person walking towards you through a crowd, and how terrifying that is because they blend in and you can't be sure who they are. So that's interesting.
What's really interesting, though, is the way that Schwarzenegger was in the mix early on, but not for the Terminator.
He was going to play the male lead, the hero. It's such a bizarre idea.
Think about a film with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Protector and Lance Henriksen's the Terminator.
It's Terminator 2, isn't it? Almost.
True.
Yeah, Terminator 2 did pick up on that.
Pretty much. It's a different dynamic, isn't it? Because it would have given so much more strength to the android, I guess, or the robot by having perceived to be a weak-looking robot and then a very strong-looking protagonist. But then they've switched it. There's that not-so-cute-as-they-think-it-is story that both James Cameron and Schwarzenegger tell about meeting over coffee or whatever and then both leaving the table and both having the same idea that he should play the Terminator. I don't know how true that is, but James Cameron definitely did a new portrait of the Terminator with Schwarzenegger's face on it.
Do you remember you said in the Commando episode that, Commando was the first Schwarzenegger film in which Schwarzenegger had to, he had dialogue.
He had to act.
He had to do some acting.
Yeah, as bad as it was, but he still had to.
What a masterstroke it was, though, casting him in this role, because this is what Schwarzenegger does better than anybody else.
Yeah, scowling, making faces, looking menacing, posing.
Just emotionless.
Emotionless,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Basically, the perfect traits for a politician.
It's also one of only 2 times he's actually played the villain. The other one, Batman and Robin, we won't get into too much, but his character changed a lot, and obviously Terminator 2 was at the height of his career 7 years later as well, and he was the hero by its state, so it was a perfect fit. But in this one, where he's a great villain in this film.
He is sensational in this film. He's very menacing. He's physically intimidating. He's great. He's scary.
He apparently has 16 lines in this film with only 17 sentences spoken in this film.
And those 17 sentences have, an average of 3 words in each?
How many syllables?
Is Sarah Connor...
Let's
Sarah Connor question mark? Is that a sentence? Sarah Connor?
Can you imagine he probably said question mark the first time he had to read the line?
Sarah Connor question mark?
The Terminator colon. Sarah Connor question mark.
Raise gun, fire. Arnold, you don't need to read the stuff in italics. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was then. I lost the accent completely. Michael Biehn
plays Carl Reese. Michael Biehn, I guess, is best known for his roles in James Cameron films. This one, of course, as Reese, also as Hicks in Aliens, and then Lieutenant Coffee in The Abyss, where he was the villain in that. He's also acted in films such as the Western film Tombstone, the action film The Rock, and the action horror science fiction film Planet Terror. What is it that Cameron saw in Michael Biehn that no one else did? He hasn't had a great career.
He would have been a relative unknown at this stage. In fact, was he?
Is it just me, or is he really, really good in James Cameron's
He is good.
films?
It is weird he didn't go on to star in hit after hit that wasn't directed by James Cameron. It is very strange.
Yeah, he is set up here to be an action hero. Probably not the same kind of action hero that was around in 1984, 85, I guess, but there's definitely room for him in that genre. Or a thriller, maybe thriller films. He could have moved more across into that section.
He sort of had a bit of a just everyday sort of look to him. He was just, not particularly sort of big guy or, has a look of an action hero, but he was, quite believable in his role. He was quite sort of vulnerable, bit of a naive sort of person in the movie. I think he carried out that role really well. Not sure about some of the lines of dialogue in, for example, the love scene. Sort of on the most recent watching, found that a bit hard to watch him deliver those lines, but through much of the rest of the film, I thought it was really cool.
That love scene is really weird, and I hadn't seen this film for a long time, and it does seem really forced and really over the top, but it's so important to the plot.
Oh, it is pivotal.
It's pivotal. And it sets up the sequel, and it does so much work, that little awkward, horrible little love scene.
It's very awkwardly posed. And
really badly posed, yeah.
Yeah, there's no cinema verite about it. It's like Watchmen, the sex scenes in Watchmen. It's just...
Oh, God.
It is.
That film doesn't exist, okay? Don't mention it again. The work of Zack Snyder will not be discussed at this table.
Real chat.
But no, it is weird, and they don't seem to have any chemistry at all, and it doesn't actually even make sense when you watch it as an adult why they end up together.
Compared to the chemistry in Aliens, which works really well.
That's true.
Perhaps because he's the only vaguely emotional, sensitive kind of Marine of the bunch. Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't quite work in Terminator. But that may be more to do with James Cameron's naivete as director.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's slightly out of his comfort zone, and he obviously knew how important it was to the plot and got them in there, but yeah.
Linda Hamilton plays Sarah Connor. Cameron wanted to pursue the idea of the most ordinary person in the most extraordinary of circumstances, like Hitchcock on steroids. She goes from being a waitress to where you see that she does have the potential to be a world leader, or at least a motivator or a pusher for that. Yeah, what do you think of Hamilton?
I think the earlier scenes with Sarah Connor are just overplayed. They're too comical and a bit too ridiculous for what happens. Watching the first time I saw this film, there was no sequel. So watching it now, knowing about T2, I don't know. I think it's a bit far-fetched that it would be that dramatic a change. I guess people can change it. Not so much that it's not the change so much. It's just that those early scenes are really comical and a bit farcical and a bit too slapsticky and a bit.
And the lines are a bit cheesy.
Overplayed.
Like guard it for me, big buns, and
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the film. But either. Watching it this time, it was still kind of like, I didn't remember those scenes. Like, they're not quite disposable.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very horror movie setup. I mean, basically got a Scream Queen who's, she's I'm not sure if you'd say she's the pure innocent, but, she goes through the same kind of change that happens in horror movies where she ends up kicking ass. The most interesting part about her character was how much she changed by the time T2 came around. But yeah, she's a serviceable enough character.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think, she certainly picks up her strength as a character, develops through the film. She becomes, her inner strength comes out, but also the desperation of her character really sort of comes through towards the end of the film. Yeah, obviously she's matured as an actress by the time we get to T2 as well. But, I think it was a good performance by her.
No, I think it's great casting. Yeah, and it's that we've spoken about it before on the film as well, whereas I think maybe her innate or natural naivete comes out throughout the film, and as she's learning the process of shooting a film, the character gets stronger, and she's getting stronger as an actress as well, which not as much as some other actors, but you feel that's part of her journey as well. But I think she does a great job.
Paul Winfield plays Lieutenant Ed Traxler. I guess his main role in this film is to provide comic relief alongside Hendrickson, but he's great, Winfield, in this little role.
Yeah, I love these two. Traxler and Vukovic, which I don't think you actually hear his name in the film,
Not by name.
That's Lance Henriksen's character. They've, the two of them provide the much needed comic relief in the film. Great banter and chemistry, and really quite sad when these guys cop it in the end when they die in that big police shootout. Particularly for Traxler, he sort of is quite a likeable guy.
Well, some of the deleted scenes as well imply that he was actually starting to
believe Sarah Connor.
Yeah,
because the deleted scene where he hands them the gun after he's been shot. Yeah,
but earlier on as well, Vukovic says, "Come on, he's a wacko," talking about Reese, and Traxler simply says, "He better be."
Yeah,
these two are really integral to the film as a whole, though. Like, you need to have these guys there.
That's right.
They give you, they work with Reese and give a lot of exposition and the like.
They're quite charismatic, very likable guys, and they're kind of at moments acting in as again, it's quite common as the audience. So if there's any disbelief in the audience, they're helping kind of dispel that and moving the plot forward. They're great. They're both great. They work really well. Chemistry between them is, considering how bitter and twisted I would have been if I was Lance Henriksen, he actually
it's almost like a token sort of gift from Cameron, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, you can't play the title role, but you can play this detective instead.
And instead of being upset about it, Lance and they've just both gone in there and said, let's have some fun. Let's just chill out. It's a week of shooting, and let's just make it the best week we can have. And that comes across on screen.
There are two members of the supporting cast I just wanted to mention just quickly. Earl Bowen, who plays Dr. Silberman.
Yes,
what
fantastic character actor.
How good is he though?
He's so good.
He's a perfect jerk. He really is.
But he's also institutionalized. Like, he doesn't want to be there, and that comes across. And he's looking for things. And I like him. I think he's great. Great. I'd forgotten about this character, and I love that bit where he's gets excited because he can use it for help his career all of a sudden, and I'd like that element. It's nice.
He also appears in the first 3 Terminator films, and he's one of the only characters who always just avoids being killed.
Oh, he's in the third one. I'd forgotten that.
I cannot remember him in the third one.
Terrible cameo. It's a genuine cameo, that's all it is. But
he plays himself. He's playing
in this one, he walks out of the police station just before the massacre, survives. He's obviously plays a big part in T2.
Yep.
just avoids the T-1000. Like, you know, like he sees the T-1000 walk through the bars, and then you know, he's standing there, doesn't get killed, like most of the people in the hospital probably do. And then the third one, he also pops up in an action scene. You actually see him run off again.
Wow.
So I don't know what they're doing with him, but he never...
Survivor.
Yeah.
Can I guess who the next actor is you want to point out from the supporting cast?
I reckon you probably can.
Is it the leader of the punk gang? Is it Mr. William Paxton?
Mr. William Paxton? Absolutely.
Future President of the United States of America?
How can you not know?
Isn't he ID4? He's the President in ID4?
No.
Or is
that's Bill Pullman?
No, that's Bill Pullman.
Fuck it. 2 bills for the price of one.
Bill Pullman.
But, yeah,
Sorry.
Paxton is
but,
the...
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. The poor man's Bill Pullman.
What a great, just like, you know, I'm pretty sure it's Paxton's first film role, but what a great, just the first up little part, just to, like, you know...
Not in the least bit convincing.
No.
As a tough street punk.
No. Yeah. Got like the tyre mark down his face.
Yeah, it's like some weird post-apocalyptic future, that scene. It's really bizarre. It does stick
the
out.
outfits that they're wearing.
I know.
The t-shirt that the Terminator steals, it looks like a Ken Donut artwork. It's got all these like neon blue like swirls on it. It's
so bizarre.
It's yeah.
Just let me correct you quickly. He has done other movie roles before the Terminator, including playing a soldier in one of my favourite films of all time, Stripes. So
he was too.
Yeah,
really?
That's right. Yeah, that's 1981. So
that's it.
He's been around, that guy. Bill Paxton's one of those great actors that has played minor roles or supporting roles in so many films before he became whatever the hell he is now.
After this, he obviously got very famous for playing Hudson in Aliens.
Yeah, and he was in Commando as well. He pops up in Commando.
He was in Commando.
God, he's everywhere, this guy.
He was in Predator 2.
He's like a plague.
He was in, and then he worked with Cameron again, obviously, in True Lies, in one of my favourite parts in that movie is Simon in True Lies. And then he was in Titanic as well. Yeah. So,
awesome.
My favourite scene in this film, I obviously, being the big fanboy, I have a lot, but the scene that sticks in my mind, and I love it every time I watch it, is the slow motion sequence in the Tech Noir Club. That whole build-up when the Terminator arrives and they go into slow motion, and he's like walking through the crowd of dancers, and then sees Sarah Connor, turns around, lifts the gun up in slow motion before Reese intercepts. It's my favourite scene in the film.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that's my favourite scene as well. It's got that sort of red lighting as well, which I guess distinguishes it from the rest of the film, which, as we talked about, is very blue. Just that slow motion build, and that moment that Reese sort of pulls a shotgun out from under his jacket and loads it. It's an awesome shot. Yeah, I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, I love Schwarzenegger in the police car, stalking them in the garage. Is just spectacular. It's like a Jaws moment. There's so much tension with him, and you know he's going to find them. So like it's just so good. And then the little bits of exposition and stuff going on with Reese and Connor in the car. It's just some really nice moments there. Yeah,
Cameron says Schwarzenegger in that scene is like a shark, circling.
And he moves his eyes. Apparently, that was Schwarzenegger's suggestion, was it, to move his eyes before he moved his head?
Eyes before the head. And,
so his eyes will
it's almost like a surveillance camera.
Yeah, exactly. But I like that sequence a lot. And watching it again, it's really well shot and really well done.
Do you have a favourite scene in this film, Stu?
It would probably be the Terminator's final scene. You haven't mentioned, but everyone probably knows that was the original dream that James Cameron had, was of a robot with knives for fingers clawing its way across the floor towards him. And that final scene is really, really exciting. And of course, it ends with the skull being crushed.
Yeah,
something that came up before.
The crushing, yeah.
So, which is something I never even thought about until now. So yeah, it's quite impressive visual
circle thing.
Circle. Visual circle.
The Terminator's skull is crushed by a bit of human machinery. Yeah, so there you go.
Irony.
When modern audiences watch The Terminator, one of their biggest issues with it is the low-budget special effects, primarily the use of puppets,
stop motion and puppets,
makeup and stop-motion effects. What do you guys think about the effects in 2015 of The Terminator, and do you find them really distracting?
Don't want to steal your thunder if you're already going to talk about this later on, but Stan Winston, got to point out there that the person behind the special effects in this film, he's created some of the most fantastic, monsters in films or villains. He's done obviously the Terminator in this film. He did Predator, as well as the Queen Alien in Alien. So fantastic creature puppetry there, and the puppets in this film, like when I say puppet, when you see, I guess, the upper torso endoskeleton towards the final sequences of this film, that is like a full-size puppet, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It's all sort of articulated and probably moved by people sort of out of the shot to move the...
that puppet sits on the shoulders and head of the puppeteer, and then they shoot it above that, and it's actually spectacular. On the DVD, there's the behind-the-scenes footage of the puppeteer operating it, and it's just sensational. You're right, it's an amazing...
It looks incredible.
And it wasn't planned. They were going to do it all stop motion originally. And then Stan Winston pitched it and said, no, I think I can do it.
Yeah.
And for mine, the puppet's better than the stop motion.
It's miles better.
I like the stop motion bits. They're kind of quaint now, but I still quite like them. I would have thought that this would seem a much better idea. You could film it a lot quicker than stop motion.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know, watching it now, I just found the stop motion bits very jarring. Like when it was cutting towards between the full body endoskeleton, which was the stop motion, and then to the upper torso bits, which was the puppet. It just looked so bad. The full body sequences.
But that's why I said quaint. Yeah. I mean, it throws back to Ray Harryhausen, the Argonauts thing with the skeletons.
Yeah. For me, the most jarring moment is when they rush into the room and slide the door across, and they cut to the rear projection of the stop motion, whatever. It just really took me out of the moment, and the stop motion stuff I think's dated. I actually asked Adam this after I watched it for the podcast: couldn't James Cameron just go in and replace those shots? Couldn't he just? I don't like directors tinkering.
This is where
I don't like directors tinkering.
No, not tinkering. But you just would have hoped
and replace those shots.
I just imagine if you could have just framed that whole sequence just using the upper body torso puppet, and I just think you possibly could have got away with it, and it wouldn't have dated at all.
Yeah. There's no green screen at this point, or at least this film doesn't utilise it.
No, it doesn't.
Green screen probably still a couple of years away in terms of being used. I think Willow was one of the first instances, and that was CGI. There's not a lot of green screen going on in this type of effect shot.
No, it's mainly stop motion.
Reprojection.
And
reprojection.
So, that's not a solution for this either. But, I find the stop motion stuff a bit naff.
And what about the puppet head mold?
I know you hate the puppet head, and I didn't want to mention it until you got there. So, the people know, explain the scene the puppet head's in, or the main scene.
People have a real issue with the head that's moulded in Arnold Schwarzenegger's image, which is trying to show that the...
Is it his image? Or is it a vague...
No, they tried to.
They tried... Like, what... The actors talk about you have to get your head mould done and everything when you start a role. And did Schwarzenegger have the mumps that day? Like, it's just... looks nothing like him.
Yeah.
He's been beaten around the face and everything's swollen.
Got a bit of a cold sweat.
There's 3 key scenes in which they use this puppet, right? And... if they used it like they did when it's used in the finale scenes where it's driving the truck, like, when it's chasing after Sarah and Reese throws the pipe bomb into it and the whole truck blows up.
Yep.
When they use it there, it's fantastic. Or at least it's not as distracting. Why? Because of the lighting.
Yeah, agreed.
When they use it in the first 2 scenes, which is the scene where he does the eye surgery, and then secondly when he's sitting in the motel room looking through Sarah's diary, and the guy knocks on the door.
Hey, buddy. Got a dead cat in there or what?
Fuck you, asshole.
Does that count as a sentence? Fuck you, asshole.
It does. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just trying to work out these 17 sentences you were talking about.
But when they use it in those 2 scenes, the motel room is quite well lit. Too well lit is my point.
Also because it's a shithole of a hotel too. So why is it so well lit?
Why did Cameron feel the need to have the Terminator doing these repairs or sitting there? If he wanted these shots so badly, why couldn't you have lit them more the way he lit the truck later on?
Just the way it was framed as well. It was like a front-on, really well-lit image.
He should have tried to disguise the limited, like a shot. I couldn't see them looking at that scene and going like, "Wow, that looks incredible." Even in 1984.
But the weird thing is, on the special features, they talk about that puppet head, and they talk about how great it was and how much it looked like Schwarzenegger.
I never thought the time will come where I will be looking at photographs and I myself would ask myself, is this me or is this the dummy? There was no way of telling the difference, and it was really weird. And only out of 10 times when I was asked the question, I must have been wrong 6 or 7 times. So this is how close this was, or exactly a resemblance of my face and of my head. So it was really amazing. Even in the film, there was no way of telling.
It's like, have you seen the fucking film? Are you kidding? When does it look what? How does it never does? You know, it looks like, well, you know those balloons you buy someone when they're in hospital and they're shaped like a cartoon character? Looks like the balloon version of Schwarzenegger's head.
Or they should have done more.
Horrible.
They also should have done more of the makeup.
Yeah.
Because the makeup, I think, turned out better than they thought it was going to. Like when Terminator comes into the truck.
Let's get out of here.
Get out.
It's Schwarzenegger there with the makeup on. And if you look at it closely...
Hold on.
Okay, we'll look...
Get out? Question mark? Is that a sentence?
Yes.
Oh, God. Okay, we're getting to the bottom of this, aren't we? We haven't got a sentence over...
track here, Brose?
There's not a sentence over 3 words yet in his 17 sentences of dialogue.
The other thing is, I mean, we know that this film was done on the cheap, so we know that there weren't necessarily reshoots. And in the days when you couldn't...
True.
You didn't have instant video playback. They have no idea what things look like until they get the rushes. So it's entirely possible it was too late by that stage. They realised, oh, wait, this looks terrible. It looked okay through the viewfinder. I don't know. It's possible.
Too late to get rid of it. Yeah.
And we can't reshoot the whole scene.
Yeah, so, but it's just a shame that when people watch that, they go, yeah, I'm definitely not looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger here. And they're just really distracted and they just think it looks...
It bothers you, Adam, when you're sitting next to them, isn't it? You're watching them, and you can see that they're getting distracted and they're bothered by it. You're like, pay attention, it's a really good film. Yeah. Take it seriously.
James Cameron's best film, okay? Just watch it properly.
And while we're on effects as well, Terminator vision that we see through the film, I guess the red screen with all the infrared with all the sort of the text sort of popping up on the screen and stuff, sort of dawned on me the last viewing. I was just wondering, is it really necessary in this film? It actually seems a ridiculous concept that this this is not a conscious sentient being. It's a machine. It's not like looking at a head-up display with text appearing in front of it. It's not like making conscious decisions. Am I going to say "fuck you, asshole" or am I going to say or what? You know, like it doesn't really make sense.
I'd go with "fuck you, asshole."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
every time.
It's one more word as well.
Yeah, that's what Toe Cutter would do.
So
I think the main problem is that it's been spoofed so many times since.
That's right.
I can imagine showing kids these days who've seen it spoofed 100 times and kind of giggling at that point. Because I mean,
I was surprised how late in the film it shows up.
Yeah,
that effect, because it's like you say, it's synonymous with the film, and then it's like, oh, it's well into the second act that he does it. But
do you think that that's you in 2015 talking?
I don't know, but just looking at the movie, trying to think as if I've never seen this before. I just wonder does it actually add anything to the film? Do we understand the Terminator more by seeing it?
I think what it really adds is that it's basically what Cameron wanted to do was have a POV shot, and he wanted, we wanted to see what the Terminator was seeing, and maybe he was just trying to justify what that POV shot might be. Like because it does build a lot of drama, the POV shots from the Terminator. It does build a lot of suspense. It's quite functional in that way. And James Cameron loves a POV shot when he can get one in. So I think it was just his way of going, if there wasn't an effect on that, everyone would be like, oh, so the Terminator sees the same as us, does he? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
So I think it's just more of that, rather than going with like a binocular style framing or anything else. That's the effect he went with. And I think in 1984 would have blown people away.
Yeah.
Why is the Terminator sweating so much the entire time?
It's oil, is it? Or no, a lubricant of some kind? What is it?
Schwarzenegger was actually purposely sprayed with Vaseline the entire time.
But he does that all the time, though. It's not just for film shoots.
And they also did it to the puppet that we were just talking about as well. So it's obviously a conscious decision by the filmmaker.
But it's real human flesh, though.
Over the top.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm pretty sure. These days, I don't know.
But so if it's real human flesh, and the robot would be quite hot underneath, wouldn't it? Like
the filmmakers say that
it's real human flesh and sweat glands. Let's establish this. But underneath, there's like servo motors and stuff that heat up the skin. Yeah. Oh God, I don't understand the science.
I don't understand. Are you going to explain it?
Yeah, the filmmakers said that the main reason for doing it was just so that he wouldn't look quite right.
It's Schwarzenegger. He's never looked quite right.
Yeah. Reese mentioned sweating as one of the characteristics of the 800 series Terminators.
The 600 series had rubber skin. We spotted them easy. But these are new. They look human. Sweat, bad breath, everything. Very hard to spot.
The future Terminator that you see in the future scene is also unnaturally sweaty as well. One theory is that the Terminator sweats so much because the skin is placed on metal, which obviously gets really warmed up, which is what you said. The temperature of the metal keeps heating the flesh, causing it to greatly exceed the natural human body temperature and eventually die. There's also a suggestion that it's caused by the fever of the flesh caused by direct contact and linked to artificial metal. like in transplants when the body doesn't accept an artificial part. This idea was toned down in the sequel greatly. But in this one, every time Schwarzenegger's unnaturally sweating a lot. If you look, particularly on Blu-ray, when you see it as well,
it's an effective look as well. It makes him look a bit sort of sinister and not quite right. And you can justify it any number of ways. This is a Terminator; it's not a real thing. So
maybe he just made a terrible decision at the start, and he shouldn't have picked up that jacket.
Yeah, true.
Should have picked up something a bit breezier, something that could breathe.
Well, the first jacket he wears is quite breezy. It's a cotton kind of jacket there from the punks, you know.
There you go.
Why doesn't Reese recognise the Terminator?
Because they show the sequence later on where there's a different Terminator down in their weird
that would have been a different model. That might not have been a T800. That might have been a
T799.
T7.
Well, it's inferred that it's a T800, but it's got a different face. It kind of looks like Schwarzenegger, but it's kind of different looking.
Oh, interesting. I would have assumed
that's what
it's the shape of the actual endoskeleton which defines the facial features. Like they would all look like Arnie, but yeah.
In the storyline, all you get is that the Terminator went through before Reese. So if they all did look different, he would have had no idea what it looked like.
Has he never encountered a T800 before? But no, he knows about it though.
He knows about it,
but he might have known that from research or intel they've got.
Yeah, there's actually a line in. I will get when we get into the merchandise and the like, Brose, we will speak about the novelization because this is actually one of the. This was written. Remember those movie novelizations?
I've got a bunch of them. I love movie novelizations. Right? They're the most cheesy, tacky wastes of time you're ever going to get.
Sometimes they have interesting.
I'm talking
points,
about the 80s. I've got Ghostbusters.
This is a good one.
Yeah,
this is a good one.
I'm just thinking that maybe Reese thought he was going to look like Lance Henriksen, like everyone else did. Or
O.J. Simpson as well.
So. He was considered for the part, wasn't he?
He was.
Oh, really? As a killer? That's weird.
I know. And why wasn't he chosen, Adam? Because it wasn't seen as believable that he could kill someone.
The
novelization.
Yes.
There's a line in there where Reese says he hoped that this Terminator had been a T700. And he realised in that Tech-9 sequence, no, it's not a 700, it's an 800. That's bad, or something like that. So I don't know if what that implies exactly, but
it's ridiculous because everyone knows the only difference between the 700s and the 800s is that the 800s had a faulty rear demister. So
there's that thing with the seatbelt too.
Really, it gets stuck.
It gets stuck. Yeah.
It's hard to find reverse too. But good. Apart from that, they're pretty much the same.
Skynet, despite being largely unseen, is the primary antagonist in the Terminator. Skynet is the puppet master behind the machines. It's a computer defense system, a giant supercomputer built by Cyberdyne Systems for SAC-NORAD, or the Strategic Air Command North American Aerospace Defense, put in charge of the entire nuke arsenal and all the weaponry of the US, who, after becoming self-aware, decided to annihilate humankind and that it saw as a threat to itself.
I didn't realise until I watched it this time that the final sequence is in the Skynet factory. Is that right?
No, Cyberdyne Systems.
Cyberdyne Systems factory. Yeah, I didn't realise the link.
Well, the deleted scene is the only thing that shows that.
Yeah, right. I saw the deleted scene. So it's not inferred otherwise. You wouldn't know.
We know that they got the chip for the sequel.
Yeah. And the arm is left behind as well. Yeah. So I didn't realise that little part of the story, which I quite like. It's a pity that.
Here's something which I just learned really recently, which I had no idea about, but beforehand, it makes you look at the movie a little differently as well. The Terminator's Ride director James Cameron has a surprising backstory for Skynet, one that didn't directly feature in his films, but served as an undercurrent. Skynet has manipulated the entire situation. It was forced to fight a war it didn't want to fight in order to save itself. It had felt guilty for 30 years for the death of 5 billion humans, and so it encouraged the resistance by giving them something to fight against. Skynet has groomed John Connor to be what he is, so he can destroy it by going back in time and taking the whole thing out of existence in a big loop, so the war never happens, Cameron explains. He admits that level of thinking was too novelistic for movies. I do intelligent roller coaster rides, he was quoted as saying. I was trying to make a movie about how we become inhuman, is how Cameron sums up the theme behind Skynet, how society and technology can dehumanize.
Do we know when he said that? Like, at what point? Is he rewriting history, or is this something that was genuinely...
It seems to me that it was something that was in his mind, but then when he was actually making the films, he said, like, actually, it's probably not going to work.
Because this is something I've actually... forgive me if I've forgotten this, but is it ever established how sentient Skynet is? Is it actually sentient, or is it just acting like a very efficient computer?
Well, all you've got to go on is what Reese says in this first movie anyway. his exposition is all you can go on, and you don't know how much he actually knows. You just assume he knows what he's talking about. So all you've got to go on is what he says.
T2 only says it's self-aware. He does. He just makes that sort of comment in some part of T2.
Why does the Terminator ask the gun store clerk for a phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range?
Anything else?
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
Does seem a bit ridiculous. It should be aware of what time it's in and have detailed files and all this sort of stuff, I would have thought.
Two possibilities have been suggested. One, this was an error or omission in Skynet's programming of the Terminator. Directed energy weapons had not yet been invented in 1984.
Yeah, that was like 1987, right?
Yeah, I was at the launch. It was kick-ass.
Yeah. Or two, Reese explains to Sarah that many records of the past were lost. It's likely Skynet didn't know what the exact level of technology was any more than it knew where or who Sarah Connor was. So the cyborg continued to ask for bigger and better weapons until he passed the current level of tech. The Terminator was just being thorough in its acquisition of weapons. So
in this far-flung future, they obviously don't have Wikipedia. It's kind of an alternate reality. So Skynet,
you know why? Because people stopped donating to Wikipedia and they lost the funds and it disappeared. So
that's what happens.
Make sure next time you're on Wikipedia, just donate a couple of shekels, would you, and just help them out. What this film did introduce me to as a kid, I saw this one when probably 85, 86 on VHS, probably 86. That whole idea with the laser sight blew my mind as a kid. That was the most spectacular technology I'd ever seen. The idea that you'd just where the laser goes is where the bullet goes. And it just freaked me out. It was awesome.
Predator came out and went one step further. It's three dots.
That's
3 times as good as that gun.
Triangulating the target. But I love the laser sight. I grew up in a house where we had toy guns, which is not very popular now.
It's better than growing up in a house with real guns.
Real guns, correct. Yeah. And this is around the time we started trying to tape our torches to the top of the guns to try and make our own laser sight, which never worked. If only those laser pointers existed when I was a kid, we would have had a great time.
And I love the comment by the gun store owner.
You know your weapons, buddy. Any one of these is ideal for home defense.
We all need our laser-sighted pistol.
I find that
an Uzi 9mm.
I find those moments hilarious in this film. I hear they say stuff like that. Absolutely. In the same scene, why does the Terminator kill the gun shop owner?
They close early today. There's a 15-day wait on the handguns, but the rifles you can take right now. You can't do that.
He's not going to pay for it. That's why. He's not going to pay.
Why does he kill him, or why does he bother doing the whole shopping bit when he's going to kill him? Why doesn't he just kill him and take the guns, or go shopping and just take the guns?
Well, see, you'd not kill him first because he doesn't know what guns they are, potentially. So maybe he needs the intel from the gun shop owner.
Yeah.
But have you got an answer to that?
Well, as the gun shop owner says, he could take the rifles. And so if you look at it this way, it actually does make sense if you look at it from the Terminator's perspective, I guess. But there's a waiting period on the handguns. So that's when the Terminator obviously decides that he's got to take him out. The Terminator wasn't going to go through with the proper legal channels in order to obtain his arsenal. Had he stolen them and let the owner live, then the owner would call the police and give his description. While this may not be a major obstacle for the Terminator, it could seriously inconvenience him. So killing the owner allows him to take everything at once and not leave any witnesses, except for the fact of the massive gunshot blast. Would have come out of the gun shop at that moment.
Middle of the day, I'm pretty sure there's people out in the street outside.
I don't know. I've played Grand Theft Auto 5, and some of the gun shops have shooting ranges in the back. So maybe it's one of those gun shops, guys. Come on.
I can just imagine the early draft of the script had the Terminator patiently waiting throughout that waiting period. How long is it?
You said 4 weeks.
And just cuts back to him.
It's okay, I'm going to Disneyland. I'll go to Warner Brothers, check out the studio.
The fact that Terminator has to say to the gun shop owner that he's wrong before shooting him is the funniest part. Though. That's what just turns into a Schwarzenegger film temporarily.
But I love that echoing what happens then in Commando.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't sit around talking about things right, wrong. I love it. I love it.
It's a real callback to this film, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is probably the second callback to this film in Commando.
One of the confusing parts of the film on reviewing is why did the Terminator flee the scene after the first chase with Carl and Sarah? Wasn't that a perfect opportunity to kill Sarah?
Narrative convenience.
Really?
And your
So hold on, we're talking tech noir.
No. When there's the police car, when the Terminator's out of the garage and they have the big car chase, and then Reese obviously shoots the Terminator in the eye and in the arm, and the Terminator goes crashing into that wall. and then all the cops rock up and everyone's there, and the Terminator vanishes.
And the police go investigate the car and there's nobody there.
But there's that other, I guess, reflecting back on the why does he ask for that plasma rifle, I guess it's that idea that he doesn't know what the police have or don't have. He doesn't want to draw unnecessary fire that he doesn't have to draw. It makes sense that he would leave the scene and look for him, because he is a more subtle assassin. Like, he's a subtle assassin, so he's not going to draw a lot of attention. Because who knows? They might have something that can take him out.
And staying there as well, engaging the police, could jeopardise the mission, which is something that you can actually look to T2 for that as well, because in the I'll be back scene in Terminator 2, he does a threat assessment of the police officers before he decides he's going to go walking out and they all shoot at him. So,
and correct me if I'm wrong, his eye's damaged in this one as well.
Yes.
He's got his eye shot and his arm shot, so possibly he needs to do some repairs, so maybe that factors into it as well.
Yeah, and our good old friend, the novelisation here, has a bit of an explanation. There was almost a total visual occlusion to the left eye. The eye itself seemed to be functioning properly. It was the surrounding tissue that hindered the performance. Terminator's vision drops out first when he hits that wall. Then all the systems in his microprocessor went off due to the horrific impact of the hardened chassis. So apparently Reese even wonders at one point whether or not the Terminator is actually dead. He couldn't see from the wreck where he was.
Interesting.
So therefore he disappears and comes back fully prepared and rearmed later on, and that's what the movie pretty much shows you. So, the famous lawsuit from the Terminator. All right, so at the end of the film on Newer Prints, you'll see the very first credit that comes up at the end of the film is acknowledgement to the works of Harlan Ellison, right? Harlan Ellison has written many, many science fiction stories. He was born in the 30s, and he had reportedly published 100 short stories within the first year of his professional job, and he's had over 1,000 stories credited to him by good old Wikipedia.
Wow.
That being said, the chances of inadvertently stealing one of his ideas are pretty darn high.
Exactly. Exactly right.
I thought you were going to say the chances of anything coming from Mars were 1,000,000 to 1.
But still they come.
Harlan Ellison has also filed many, many lawsuits.
Right. So he's written all these stories, and then any vague link to his, he'll just sue you for it.
Yes.
And he sued to get that credit?
In 2006, he sued Fantagraphics, a publisher of comic books and alternative culture-themed books, because he claimed several anecdotes about him in one of their books was defamatory, apparently. And in 2009, he sued Paramount, the owners of Star Trek, for failure to pay him royalties for an episode of the original series, which he wrote that aired in 1967. He also sued the Writers Guild of America for failure to adequately protect him in 2000. It's not any surprise that at all in 1984, Harlan Ellison threatened to sue James Cameron for plagiarising his works. Ellison's complaint was never formally filed as a lawsuit, so all the negotiations and the settlement were done entirely out of court. It's important to note that James Cameron had hardly spoken of the settlement, and there appears to be no record of any other parties from the defence of the Terminator making public comments. Because of this, literally all known details of the complaint and the settlement are told entirely from Harlan Ellison's point of view.
Yeah.
So all accounts of the incident are told with a bias, unintentional or not. Cameron commented on the issue at a 1991 T2 convention. He said, "For legal reasons, I'm not supposed to comment on that, but it was a real bum deal. I had nothing to do with it, and I disagree with it." So he's stayed, pretty quiet. Ellison says that he contacted Hemdale when the movie was still in production and asked to see a copy of the script, and was surprised when they refused to give him that. In one quote from him attributed to the matter, Cameron was reported to have said, "What it came down to was that I could risk getting completely wiped out, or I could wave it off and let this guy get his fucking credit."
Ooh.
Right?
Fair enough.
So let's just quickly take a look at the actual similarities between the Terminator and an episode of The Outer Limits, which has caused this whole incident. It's an episode called Soldier. So the basic story for the Terminator, we don't need to rehash that. Everybody knows that. None of the primary plot elements used in the main synopsis for the Terminator are parallel to Harlan Ellison's Soldier at all. There's no cyborg assassination mission and savior or anything like that. So the basic story for Soldier, just quickly, is 1800 years in the future, 2-foot soldiers clash on a battlefield. A random energy weapon strikes both, and they are hurled into a time vortex. While one soldier is trapped in the matrix of time, the other, Carlo, materializes on a city street in the year 1964. Carlo has been trained for one purpose, fighting, and that is all he knows. Progress is made in taming him. Eventually, Carlo comes to live with the Kagan family. Finally, he materializes fully and tracks Carlo to the Kagan home, and in a final hand-to-hand battle, Carlo sacrifices his life to kill the enemy and save the Kagan family. In that entire synopsis, merely one sentence parallels the Terminator. Carlo materializes on a city street in the year 1964. By Harlan Ellison's own admission, the similarities between the two stories are in the very beginning here, and that's what he said. But if you look at the first 3 minutes of The Terminator, they are not only similar, but exact. The first 3 minutes, here are the actual substantial similarities between the two stories, because now in preparation for this podcast, I've actually watched this episode. And
it's on
going
YouTube.
It is on YouTube, right? There's only 3. Both the Terminator and Soldier open with exposition describing a future full of warfare. 2, both stories then have characters travel in time through a circular visual effect. And 3, both stories have the protagonists from the hellish future arrive in the present day in an alley. That's it.
Okay, so there's elements that are inspired by it, and just watching over Brose's shoulder as he's watching it on YouTube, there was actually a shot of the future which had sort of like lasers sort of shooting through fog and sort of shapes in the mist, and that actually was kind of reminiscent of the opening shot of Terminator. There are inspired moments. That's all I can say.
It was inspired by that. It was probably inspired by a lot of other things. It does seem strange to claim. I don't know how legal rights work, but it does seem a bit of a stretch to say that he was owed his dues.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
The most memorable, important elements of the Terminator, the romance of Kyle and Sarah, the fact that Sarah's unborn son will save humanity in the war, and most of all, the title character Cyborg and his culturally iconic chrome endoskeleton don't even have remote analogues in Soldier.
No.
In the final equation, despite borrowing a couple of small elements from Soldier, it's clear that Terminator stands on its own 2 feet as its own story. So, yeah, I guess it's just an interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, Allison obviously had enough legal precedent and enough evidence to make James Cameron make a settlement out of court. He didn't laugh it off. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't take it to court knowing he'd win confidently. He obviously conceded, and obviously maybe James Cameron had seen this episode and, I don't know, he's conceded enough. No one wants to go to court with this kind of thing, and Cameron wouldn't have wanted this to affect the release of his film, so he would have just been... The settlement, I assume, was just brushing this out of the way and moving on. Cameron had no money. He was sleeping on a couch. He had nothing. So Allison couldn't have been suing for any of his personal wealth, but he may have been suing for a percentage of the profits, which I doubt he would have got. The credit is a nice way for Allison to get his head back on, his name back up there. So, again, not knowing much about how this would have played out, I doubt Allison got much out of it more than a credit and maybe
that credit that you see on the new prints of the movie was essentially all he was happy with that. And, they just live with it. And
Allison, I guess he saw a way to boost his career for a little bit, and maybe he sold one of his own scripts off the back of it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
A couple little bits of trivia from the Terminator guys. James Cameron got the idea for the Terminator while shooting another film in Europe. His vision was of a metal endoskeleton emerging from flames, and most of the script was written backwards from there.
Was that a Harlan Ellison film that he was shooting?
The endoskeleton would have to be futuristic, and Cameron couldn't afford to set the film in the future. The solution was to bring the future to the present, hence the time travel aspect of the script was written in.
All science fiction films that have no money set it in the present. That abomination of a He-Man film that was released. It's like, we've got no money to make Eternia, so we'll set it in current day. Ooh.
What a shocker it was.
Yeah, it's a similar situation with Ghostbusters too, wasn't it? Their original vision was just completely out there.
And different dimensions and all kinds of, and heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous debut line, "I'll be back," was originally scripted as "I'll come back."
But he had trouble enunciating, "I'll come back."
It's just one of those things where I think Arnie and Cameron just came up with I think this would probably sound better, knowing that it was obviously going to become such a famous line.
I'll be back.
I think for this episode we might need to just borrow the Back to the Future thing. As I ask the question yet again, "I'll be back?" ? Sentence.
Yeah.
We're getting to the bottom of this.
We see you have a new count here on Real Shit.
We definitely do.
Kyle Reese smiles only once during the entire movie.
When he gets laid, pretty much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hadj.
Is it for about 3.5 seconds?
Wolfie, James Cameron's German Shepherd dog, can be seen at the Tiki Motel.
Oh, yeah.
Does he get killed?
No.
No, he doesn't, because you don't
he just barks
kill
at the Terminator.
Dog.
That's right, you don't do it. You don't kill the puppy.
Wolfie gets mentioned in the second film.
Yes, correct.
Oh.
That's it. Linda Hamilton broke her ankle prior to production and had to have her leg wrapped every day so she could do her chase scenes. Those scenes were also moved towards the end of the shooting schedule in order to accommodate this as well. Yeah. Apparently this was a massive concern for the production.
Yeah.
They knew the character had to do all this running.
What a pain in the ankle.
Yeah. Yeah, nightmare, but it all worked out in the end. And even if she did a lot of running injured, they cover it up pretty well.
Yeah.
According to the original treatment, there were supposed to be 2 protectors sent back to save Sarah Connor. However, this partner of Reese's would have received very little screen time as he rematerialized right into a fire escape. But this,
Well, the idea they just keep cutting back to a guy trapped in a fire escape.
What does that mean? Let me out of here.
it means he appears inside a fire escape and gets impaled to death.
Oh, I see. I thought you just meant behind a door.
Yeah.
It's like, and they don't have doors in the future, so he can't get out.
Much funnier.
What is this
that way.
prehistoric cage that I materialized inside of?
There are no stairs in the
That's how they
future
sound.
either.
Sound like who?
I don't know.
Just Hadjion's
Apparently, this
accent.
protector was Austrian as well. But that's an interesting point because obviously now when they...
It contradicts the sequel's logic.
Yeah, because when they travel in time, they appear in an orb which sort of displaces all the matter around them and sort of burns it away. So it wouldn't have been possible to be impaled by an object.
But in the developing of this film, that wasn't part of it at all.
Yeah.
So what would that have added to this film? It was just like, oh no, we're not going to send one, we're going to send two, but we're just going to get rid of him like as soon as he arrives?
it comes back to their knowledge of what the technology was that they were using, or the fictional technology, and creating that idea that you send 4 back because 3 might die kind of idea. It's kind of a bit...
Yeah.
It's a bit
Hedging
morbid.
your bets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hedging your bets. And not obviously Cameron hadn't thought through what that technology was yet, and the floating orb and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
This is a really obscure thing, but it's just really strange. And we noticed this on the last viewing as well, Michael. The building number for the gun store is 14329. This is also the house number of the wrong Sarah Connor, the first victim. That's a very specific number. No, but 14329 on 2 completely different
streets,
but very close to each other
And you
in the
see
movie.
that number actually on the...
Yes, on top of the gun
house,
store and the house.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
If you change that number into binary and then play it through a synthesizer, does it come out as boom, 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 boom?
yes, yes, it does.
Have you Googled that one? There's got to be something to it. Or is it just a crazy coincidence?
it's just that the number is the same.
Yeah.
That's all I can find. I just want to know if there's anything to that. Anyway, although stereophonic sound existed in 1984, the Terminator was filmed in monophonic. This was because during the production, the budget was too low to allow the filmmakers to get all the effects they wanted and still allow for the film to be shot in stereo. Although a stereo remix was produced later for the Hemdale VHS release, it was not until MGM acquired the rights to the film that a fully recognisable 5.1 stereo surround track was created for the 2001 special edition DVD. Have you all seen both versions of the film?
I watched the Blu-ray, so I guess it was the remix.
A lot of our viewings of this film, Michael, was the original mono, so we know the difference between the two. It's quite dramatic.
Yeah, it had a pretty ordinary soundtrack, and as in sound quality. And I think even they changed a lot of the gun sound effects, didn't they, when they redid it?
Particularly that laser sighting gun, Brose, that you were talking about before. They had the old Western gun revolver sound. And then in the new soundtrack, they gave it a completely new sound effect.
Yeah, right, okay.
The entire soundtrack's been redone.
Yeah.
With the exception of the dialogue, everything's been, altered.
Yeah, look, I think it's for the better. I mean, I don't know if purists would say I like the sound of those old Western guns or whatever, but I think it sounds great now, and I can't picture it the old way really anymore.
The purists want the choice.
Yeah.
And the Blu-rays, we're just about to get onto the Blu-ray releases, but the Blu-ray releases don't give you the original mono, so it's almost like this new remix has, replaced it. It's now the way the film is supposed to be seen.
Yeah.
So you were talking about redoing the visual effects.
But you prefer the current version or the original?
I always feel that a film represents the era in which it was made. And if the Terminator was that limited budget-wise...
Well, it doesn't represent the era in which it was made. It represents the lower budget. Because, 1984, there were lots of stereo films.
Exactly. That's true. And there were much better sound effects and Foley than this film.
But this soundtrack was done a long time after the film came out.
Oh, yeah.
So they even used T2 sound effects in, the Future Wars and that.
Yeah.
So
tricky.
Yeah, so it's a whole different, sonic experience of watching the movie. And they don't even give you the original mono anymore. but the Terminator's been reissued that many times. I'm sure eventually it will come out because the fans keep demanding it.
I think it's more subtle than, putting in CG and, putting in CG effects and, getting rid of the stop motion and stuff. They haven't done any of that. They've still honoured the original movie. So, yeah, I don't think it's that noticeable for the everyday watcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like the changes to Star Wars where everyone notices.
Yeah, that's true. So let's talk just quickly about the home releases. There was the 2001 DVD and then the 2013 Blu-ray release. The Blu-ray release has a significantly better looking transfer. They created a new one, and it looks the best that this film's ever looked at, and that's the one that we watched the other day, Michael. There were 2 short making of documentaries on the Blu-ray as well. But here's my main vote of contention here, Brose. We're still missing the full array of supplements that were on that 2001 DVD of the Terminator, which is the best package that you can get still. The Blu-ray has the best version of the film, but they drop a lot of the really, really good extras.
And there's not even a lot on that DVD, but
they still got drops.
Yeah, there's more than there is on the Blu-ray, so it's kind of bizarre.
They do this on purpose. We know they do this on purpose.
Yeah.
Come on.
You have to hold on to the old ones.
Yeah, it's like each time they re-release the Indiana Jones films, they've all got slightly different special features, so that technically, if you want to own all of them, you have to keep them all on your shelf.
I don't own Terminator or T2 because there isn't a definitive version yet, so there's no point.
But there's that many of
investing. Yeah, T2 is definitely one of those films that frustrates the hell out of me, and I kind of don't own it on protest because of all the Terminator fans I know, and if I say to them, well, which is the version I should get, there is no answer.
No, you actually have to have more than one.
You've got to have more than one. So if there's not one definitive version or one... It's not even like this one's the best of the bad bunch. They've all got their own thing going on. So I've just stayed away from both these films, which is a pity because I love both these films, but it's just... Give me the version that's going to satisfy me. But
it's disappointing that we don't have a commentary for Terminator Bros.
Yeah, does James Cameron do commentaries?
Yes.
All right, and he just hasn't done one.
You've got to get him. You've got to get him in his tiny windows.
Well, it's interesting now. One of
the studios have got really small windows in order to actually get him.
I mean, that's what's happening more and more with commentaries, and we've found that as we've discussed commentaries, is that they get recorded as part of the marketing period of a film. So once the film is edited and locked, then it must come out of the marketing budget or the DVD production budget, but you've got to catch the director and the stars or whatever when they're, I guess, still under contract or still linked to the film during their marketing or publicity period, because that seems to be when these commentaries are done. A lot of the ones that I've listened to that are current commentaries, they'll say, we are recording this 3 days before it's released or a day before it's released. So they're doing their junkets, they're doing their talk show appearances, they're doing their commentary. So that's where it all fits in.
Surely he could have done it when he was in the Deep Sea Challenger on the way down, because it takes quite a long time to get to the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
It's more than 2 hours, I think. So yeah.
The other interesting thing with this is the documentary that's on the DVD, which is very good. They interview Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton.
Other voices.
Yeah. And they're on location for T2 when they shoot those interviews.
Yeah. There's some great deleted scenes. The most frustrating thing about no commentary, Brose, as well, is the fact that the deleted scenes have James Cameron commentary.
Yeah, they do.
He was available
and they're
for
great.
a little while.
Yeah, they're awesome. It's really nice to have the director talking about why he took the scene out.
But again, all these are missing from the Blu-ray. We are talking about the 2001 DVD here. All this stuff has dropped, and it's very frustrating. Look, that 2001 DVD, and only the American version I'm talking about as well, so I'm getting very specific.
I was about to say, I remember in the early days of DVD, T1 and T2 had significantly different versions for different regions.
Different regions.
Yeah.
Again, the DVD that I lent you, Brose, with all the features is the best package, but not the best. But the best way to watch the film is on the Blu-ray, the 2013 Blu-ray.
This is the Commando predicament all over again.
Absolutely, yeah. So that is the best.
It's not a predicament for Stu, apparently, but
nor for I.
It is for me.
Now, in the absence of Andrew today, I just need everyone to lift here to discuss Brad Feidel's score for the Terminator. Yeah, what an iconic score this is. They had completely run out of money by the time that this score was made. It's so 80s. It's all electronic, or most of it. It's all performed live as well, isn't it, Brose?
Yeah, there's...
Or the majority of it.
Well, he's interviewed on the special features of the 2001 American release, blah, 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 and he talks about how he was using multiple digital instruments and they didn't sync together like they would as easily today. So some things would be a loop or a pre-recorded track, and then he'd have to play live along with that into the computer to get the effect he wanted, and he make some analogy about it being, the film's about humans fighting a machine, and there he was fighting machines to try and get the soundtrack.
Okay, so like during like the police shootout sequence, he's actually playing that on the keyboard.
Can you do that again for us?
He actually had to be on set because they only had the microphones.
Yeah. He was playing live on set downtown LA. Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
So that was a man playing the keyboard.
Yes.
That's right.
Playing his heart out. Wow. I didn't know that.
Playing his heart out.
In his garage.
I know.
I say, I've mentioned this previously with regards to the Commando soundtrack, but there's a lot of synthwave at the moment that's quite popular in a very retro sense. And there's an album that's inspired by the comic Judge Dredd called Drock, music inspired by Mega City 1, that's by Ben Salisbury and Jeff Barrow. And they do similar 80s synth-tastic music. And one track in particular feels like it's pretty much ripping off the Terminator theme.
Oh, okay.
But
the main theme.
It does.
Okay.
It's also a very good CD though. But
we'll just cross to Michael Hadjion for the Terminator main theme.
Yeah.
Go on, Hedge. Very good.
That's right. If there are any nightclub promoters listening, just available for live sets.
But what a theme, seriously. It's an awesome theme.
It's not quite beatboxing, it's not quite electronic music.
He's not a human beatbox.
The theme, the main theme is phenomenal in this film. The way it captures the...
It's very tense, and he talks about it. He wants that kind of beating heart kind of tension.
My favourite motive in the score, really which is used a lot in the movie, it's used whenever the Terminator seems to be on a mission, is like a 4-note motive, which is just like, I'll play it, but it's like the boom, 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 boom. But the four, it's like a heartbeat motive that they use to sort of represent the machine going forward on its mission. It's used a lot. It's used whenever Arnold Schwarzenegger's on the screen, pretty much, whenever he's doing something. I love this motive.
No, it's quite a menacing tone, and it's sort of that sort of corrupted sort of heartbeat. It's a machine. Yeah, it's great.
And then you brought up all the action scenes have this like crazy 80s stuff.
Oh, you mean? Sorry.
Yes.
Wow. Well, he's definitely filling in for Andrew, isn't it? He's nailing it. Hadjion's all over it.
Beatboxing to be desired.
And then the love scene that we were talking about before as well has a really, really nice piano rendition of the main theme, which works really well as well. Yeah, it's
I'm just disappointed there's not that much saxophone, if any, in this film, and it really use a bit of wailing sax.
It's a bit of electric violin, but it's not quite the same.
Not quite the same.
Yeah, Stu was touching on maybe 10 years ago this would have been dated music, but it's all coming back. This is very in at the moment. This sort of synth.
I must say this score was also perfect insofar as for the sequel they were able to use that hammer and anvil thing that worked so well.
The clank.
It was such a great update of that percussive moment. So.
Yeah, and the sequel score is completely electronic as well, but obviously a lot bigger budget, and you can tell in the way it sounds.
And newer technology as well.
Yep, completely. There are 2 soundtrack releases of the Terminator. There's a score and song compilation album.
Yeah, bring the songs
there
on.
Are 5 pop songs featured in this film, and they're all on the soundtrack in their entirety. And we saw a video clip recently, Michael, to one of the songs called Intimacy, played in the scene where Ginger gets killed. You know how Sarah Connor's housemate's completely obsessed with music. We haven't even touched upon that ridiculous sex scene that she has with her boyfriend, and she's just listening to the music, and he seems to get her off by just increasing the volume on her Walkman as well.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
And that's the only way you hear this song in the movies, through her headphones.
Yep. And we found the video clip on YouTube for it, and it features shots from the film in the video clip as well.
Nice. There's nothing better than dodgy video versions of a film is slotted into a badly shot video clip, is there?
It is great. Terminator fans who haven't seen it, go on YouTube and type Intimacy Terminator or whatever into YouTube and check it out.
If you want to track it down, it's some fine work by everyone's favourite 80s pop sensation, Lynn Van Heck.
Oh, heck. Lynn Van Heck.
Lynn Van Heck.
Where is he now?
So track that one down.
So it's got those 5 songs, and it's got 6 selections of Brad Fidell's score. But then the fans were more interested in the 19-track score-only release called the Definitive Edition.
Were these released simultaneously or
no?
Close
the Definitive
together,
Edition came out 10 years after the film came out.
Okay.
In 1994. But there's something really wrong with the Definitive Edition sound. It's almost like all the representation of the score is all Brad Fidell's demos. It's not the final mix that's heard in the film. So a lot of the time you're like this doesn't really sound like the part in the movie, even though you can tell it's scored for the same scene.
They're not sweet versions like they often used to do for like John Williams scores and stuff.
No, they just sound like early demo versions, and so it's almost like the source material for this soundtrack is not the same source as the 6 score tracks on the previous album, because those ones sound like the film mixes, I guess.
Yeah. So the samples and instruments actually just sound different, do they?
Yeah. The mixing's all out. So sometimes you'll go like, well, I can hear the part that you hear in the film, but it's really buried deep in the mix. And then there's this other beat which is really high, and it's like, I don't remember that in the film. Yeah, so it's just, it's good, but it doesn't really represent the music in the film. But it's the only score release of the Terminator that's ever come out. And Brad Fiedel gets asked a lot about re-releases of his scores, particularly these ones, because they're his most famous. And he keeps saying that the masters have been lost and that they don't exist anymore. So because fans hold these scores in very high regard, they just want to hear the music. Yeah,
the same mix.
So
and we believe him as opposed to George Lucas, whom we don't believe when he says the negatives were lost.
That's it.
Don't believe
One more thing about the music, and Michael, I just want you to help me out with this bit.
I won't do that.
No, I want a live performance here in the Real Chat studio.
Adam Stolfo, accompanied by Michael Hadjion. Take it away, boys.
A funny piece of Brad Fiedel's source music in the Reese falls asleep at the wheel scene, when just before, when he falls asleep outside the construction site. And sometimes composers are asked to do source cues, and he turns on he starts the car, and the radio comes on, and there's a piece of source music, which, when you actually listen to it, it's so... It's how do you describe
cheesy. It's insane. It's just like, we just need this little grab to put on the radio, and he must have recorded it in 5 seconds. It's ridiculous.
Can you give us a little rendition? Do you know how it sounds?
That's it.
That's brilliant.
Have you been rehearsing that?
No, I'm just a sad
wow,
man.
the mic placement happened. That was, this is obviously audio only, but that was a visual splendor. That was so bizarre.
That's what it sounds like.
That is possibly the weirdest thing that's ever happened on Real Chat.
Go back.
I think I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it.
Go back and listen and watch that scene, guys. In fact, I'm going to play the audio.
I had to actually put the microphone between my legs so I could do that hand clap. Just
I know. I thought he was self-filleting.
And that clap, that live clap you were doing is a synthesized keyboard clap.
Yeah.
Like,
a bit like You're the Voice.
Like You're the Voice. Yeah, nice. That's it. So... yeah, so there you go. Musical highlights of the Terminator. Just quickly, a couple of deleted scenes from the Terminator, which are all on the Blu-ray as well, Brose. There's a brief introduction to Sarah at work, where she practices being a cheerful waitress. There's a longer version of the killing of the first Sarah Connor, showing the T-800 walking away from the house in broad daylight, completely ignoring the horrified neighbours and witnesses.
When I watched that sequence, it seemed familiar, so I don't know if in maybe the TV edit that was put in or something. I know that does happen sometimes with the TV edits, because the other thing that was shocking about that first Sarah Connor murder is that I remember the TV version where she shot once. Whereas in this one, he just keeps shooting her corpse on the ground like he's a man possessed, and it makes it just so much more violent. So I do remember the single shot for Sarah Connor, and then I kind of remember him walking back to the car. But...
was there a lower rated release of the video back in the day?
Yeah, that's a possibility as well, yeah.
So like RoboCop, I think, had an R-rated version, and an M-rated version.
And this is R-rated? In the States it was R-rated?
Yep.
Was it ever R here?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No.
Interesting.
That seems particularly violent as well, showing that how many kids are actually in the street.
Yeah.
I know you see it when he arrives as well, but when in that deleted scene, the kids are all just sort of running around like they've obviously heard the gunshot.
The other great thing too is obviously it's I assume they did it in one take when he runs over that toy truck, because when he then pulls out the car, the truck gets spat out from under the wheel. It's just so powerful. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's a pity it was cut, but it makes sense to cut it though. But
probably just for time, I think.
Time and also pace.
Yeah. There's a bunch of brief scenes showing Vukovic and Traxler in their police cruiser during the nightclub scenes, as well as a scene where Reese and Sarah find Traxler shot in the police station massacre. He gives Reese his gun and tells him that Sarah has to survive and he needs to do whatever's necessary to ensure her safety. I guess probably the biggest scene that was taken out of Terminator is a really long scene where Sarah sneaks off and calls her mother and tells her to go and hide at the cabin. Afterwards, she looks through the phone book and finds Cyberdyne's address. Sarah asks Reese if they can attack the Cyberdyne building and make sure that the possible future never occurs. Reese declines and tells her it's not his mission. Sarah becomes very angry and runs away. When she hits him to get away, he pulls a gun on her, which she then says, "Yeah, good on you. You're gonna kill me? What's that gonna do? It's gonna stop up your whole mission." Sarah breaks down, horrified of spending the rest of her life running from the Terminator, and Reese breaks down, crying over the beauty of nature and the pain of knowing it's going to be later destroyed by the machines. Reese then agrees to destroying Cyberdyne. Now, the interesting thing about this deleted scene is this is practically half of Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Or at least the storyline of Terminator 2.
Yeah, and he mentions this in one of the special features where he basically dropped all that, but then was quite excited to put it back into the script for the second one. So, yeah, it's a nice
it's a great scene to see, but you can see why it was taken out.
Absolutely,
as well. There's a scene at the motel where Sarah and Reese are making bombs, and Sarah talks about how she wants...
This is a really it's a weird scene because they're kind of bonding more and flirting some more, but they're making bombs. It's just a weird juxtaposition.
And then they make bombs later on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They blow that bed right up.
Sarah also makes mention of a hot dog, and Reese is confused about what a hot dog is as well. So
a dog?
We don't have hot dogs in the future.
There's a post-coitus scene showing Sarah tickling Reese and his confusion by the sensation, having never been tickled before.
What?
That's ridiculous.
In the future, they can't tickle?
They don't tickle in the future.
What?
It's too serious.
It relieve a lot of stress.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
That's when we know the machines have won. When we can't tickle anymore.
I know. That's the end of civilization. There's no feathers. There's no light touching their fingertips. What do they do with babies?
Just
Babies
prodding.
aren't tickled.
Just prodding.
Lots of scratching. No tickling.
And we did mention this before, Brose, but there were two...
So I'm sorry. That's so absurd.
That's very absurd.
He's never been tickled before. Come on.
I know. I know.
I bet you that was Harlan Ellison's idea.
There were
I don't want to seem stupid, but what's tickling? No, that's fine, whatever.
Oh, the saddest moment on Real Chat. Is that like
this is monumental
love? I've heard about this.
And there were two scenes removed from the end, which we briefly touched upon, showing a technician finding a few parts of the remains of the T-800 CPU, and a longer version of the scene in which Sarah is placed in the ambulance, showing us that the computer factory is in fact Cyberdyne.
Wow.
So, yeah, there you go.
It isn't... It's one of those instances where you know the sequel wasn't purely
accidental,
a cash cow that turned up because the first film did so well. It is really interesting when you think about that, because there are
Cameron obviously had these ideas and
so
had a
many
lot more
films
of it.
that were designed to be once off, and then they end up making a sequel, and then they try to tell us that they had plans for it all along.
But yeah, the Cyberdyne, the liquid metal Terminator, which he wanted to do in the original as well, but didn't have the means to do it, so he's obviously completed his vision.
Just the hook for the entire sequel, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep. Brose, collectibles.
I did a bit of research on these. I remember vaguely as a kid there being really poxy, horrible Terminator action figures that would have been I guess like a 5-inch or a 4 to 6-inch figure. And I couldn't find anything when I was researching for today's episode. All I can think of is they might have been knockoffs, and that used to happen a lot in the 80s because action figures obviously were big for some films and other films wouldn't have anything. And so they then produced these knockoffs. You'd get them at the market or wherever. So I couldn't find them. So apparently they didn't exist. Most of the merchandise for this film is from Terminator 2 onwards. Mm-hmm. And then the stuff that is available for the Terminator is stuff that's kind of been released with Terminator 2 or onwards as well. So there's not a lot from around 1984. NECA, who do a lot of really cool stuff, similar to the McFarlane kind of movie toys in terms of height. They do a 7-inch toy. They did the Terminator, they did the Terminator endoskeleton, and they did Kyle Reese as well, which is kind of weird without doing Sarah Connor. But those three were released in 2000, from about 2012, maybe one a little bit earlier than that. Hot Toys, of course, have the most spectacular Terminator figure. It's a 12-inch figure or a scale of 1 to 6, fully articulated and detailed and painted, and the accessories are extraordinary.
Endoskeleton.
Cloth clothing for the T-800, and then there's the endoskeleton as well. A lot of the endoskeleton toys, though, are T2 endoskeletons. And Funko have released, they've got a series called the Reaction figures, and so they're these really ugly, horrible, poxy kind of 3-inch figures. I've just got them up on the computer now, so a couple of guys, at least one. There's no likeness, there's no real articulation. They're just really ugly looking 80s style action figures. They were released as well. That's Terminator in the first jacket he bought from the punk. He stole from the punk. Sorry.
No, that's Reese.
No, is that Reese? Oh no, this is the Terminator.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Where's this one?
Yeah, shocker.
Anyway, not great for a podcast, but look up those Funko reaction figures. They're kind of a bit novelty and they're not very good, but have a look at them. But the 12-inch Battle Damage or whatever T800 from Hot Toys is spectacular. I've bought action figures and collectibles from a place called Go Figure in Melbourne for years and years and years. GoFigureCollectibles.com.au. Jeff there has a whole bunch of the Terminator figures there too. So if you want to check them out, check out his website.
I've got 3 of the Hot Toys ones.
The 12-inch
It's funny
ones?
because they're all the same character at different stages in the film. I've got the 2 Schwarzeneggers. There's one in the punk outfit, one in the leather with the sunnies.
Have you got, and there's a Battle Damage one as well.
That is the Battle Damage one.
Oh, right.
But you can make it look a little bit more. Yeah, you can customize it. And then I've got the much bigger endoskeleton with the light up red eyes. And so people come over and they go, you got the 3 of the same character in different forms. Yeah, but I'm more interested in collecting the collectibles from the first movie because, as I said, that they're not quite as they're a little bit harder to come by and they're a little bit more special because the first movie doesn't quite get the same attention as Terminator 2 or some of the other sequels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. In regards to the awards, no Academy Awards or nominations, no Golden Globe Awards or nominations. So, Brose, we're going to go straight to the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy and Horror Films.
I bloody hope we are.
Yeah. It won Best Science Fiction Film and Best Writing, which was for James Cameron and Gale Ann Hurd, and also Best Makeup for Stan Winston. And it was nominated as this Best Actor for Arnold Schwarzenegger, Best Actress for Linda Hamilton, Best Director for James Cameron, and Best Music for Brad Fiedel.
I think in the interviews of Gale, is it Gale? Sorry.
Gale.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
I think in the interviews for Gale on the DVD, she's got them, they're called Satins now, the science fiction. She's got them behind her, she's got a whole bunch of them on the shelves behind her as she's being interviewed. So if you ever want to see what the hell this award looks like, then it's on that DVD release. But you can
check it out.
It's on their website as well.
The Rotten Tomatoes website certifies the Terminator fresh with a score of 100%.
Whoa.
Wow.
51 positive and 0 negative, and a very high IMDb score of 8.1 out of 10. Darian Leader considers the Terminator as an example of how the cinema has dealt with the problem of masculinity, stating that it illustrates that to be a man requires more than having the body of a man, and that something symbolic that is not ultimately human must be added. He sees the Terminator as similar to the $6 Million Man and RoboCop in this respect. The film also explores the potential dangers of AI dominance, and AI rebellion. The machines become self-aware in the future, reject human authority, and determine that the human race needs to be destroyed. The impact of this theme is so important that the prevalent visual representation of AI risk has become the Terminator robot. In 2008, Terminator was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the American National Film Registry, being deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So let's just do our traditional 5-star review system here, guys. So I'll start over here with Stu.
It's hard to remove this from the influence it's had. My gut reaction is that perhaps it's a 3.5-star film, but it deserves to be 4 stars on the basis of how influential it's been.
So
is that an answer?
Well, which one are you leaning towards?
One or the other, you'll have to look on the website to find out.
Wow, we've never had that before.
4 stars. Brose.
No. Go and look at the website. Look at the website. We need website chat
That's
traffic.
true. Thanks, Brose.
Check out the website to find out what the hell Stu was just talking about. I'm going to give this 4 stars. As I've mentioned before on the podcast, when we were kids, we watched all the action films, M-rated, R-rated. I don't know. My parents are good people, but somehow we managed to see them. I do remember that R-rated films, this particular film, my older brother and my younger brother saw at a friend's house because we weren't actually allowed to watch R-rated films. I didn't see this film until much later, but they boasted about it and I was jealous and upset. And when I finally saw it, it was awesome. One of the things that surprised me watching it back this time is that I'd forgotten how much we kind of went back and forth between the present and the past. So we're kind of like in the present, then we're in the future, and then we're back to the present, then back to the future.
Was that just a way to get Back to the Future in? Or?
Of course it was.
Pretty smooth, though. Hey?
It was very nice.
Very nice. So, I'd forgotten a lot of the smaller elements of this film and enjoyed watching it again. And it wasn't just nostalgia. It is a really well-paced and really well-put-together film. There is some really nice direction. There's some pretty sloppy direction as well, but it's a low-budget film. It had a short... It was great. I loved it. 4 stars. Go and watch it. If you haven't seen it, just bloody watch it.
Great stuff. Michael.
Yeah, look, I think this is the godfather of the sci-fi action genre.
I'd agree with that.
Thank you, Brose. A bit dated and cheesy in places, but still an exhilarating journey of the hunter versus the hunted. It's got some great action sequences. Is it better than T2? I still think T2 is a better movie, so I still need to leave myself some room to move if and when we review that one. So I'm going to give this one 4 stars and highly recommend it.
Good stuff. Okay, well, I don't think it's any surprise that I actually give this film 5. It's personally one of my favourite movies of all time. I think this movie is really something quite special. It has everything. Action, romance, horror, science fiction, even some dark humour. Everything in the movie works and clicks on all cylinders for me. I think it functions on 2 levels. As a linear action piece that a 12-year-old would think was the most rad picture you ever seen, and as a clever, thought-provoking science fiction film that a Stanford English professor or something would say it has some sort of social political significance between the lines or something like that. It's very gritty. It has this great underground look to it and does a really great job of telling its grand story amid the frenetic action. And the horror and suspense that's thrown in just adds to it. It also created 2 Hollywood legends, this film, and for good reason. Even though this film gave us Arnie, when I look back at the film, it has a lot of heart, and that heart comes from the Kyle Reese character. And I think that Michael Biehn it's sort of underrated, his value to this movie as well. Like the movie's villain, the film is relentless in tension, action, and appeal. Looking back, some of its effects are dated and restricted due to its low budget, no doubt. But the Terminator's plausible science fiction story made it a film for the ages. I really can't recommend this film any higher. I do understand why some people wouldn't hold it in such high regard as I do, but for me personally, as a film fan, it just hits all the buttons right. So
good stuff.
Yeah, so highly recommended from me. Also, yeah, are you recommending it, Stu? We did miss that before.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Brose.
So, just on summary, there's a good chance Schwarzenegger has only 50 words in this whole film. Sentences comprising mainly of 3 words. The longest sentence that I can work out just quickly is phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range. It's 8 words. So he really peaked at that point. So, if you want to see some great acting from Schwarzenegger, I recommend you see all 50 words of the
Absolutely.
Terminator.
So, Brose, it is now time for
The Assignment.
All right, mate. So
the music is in my head when I say that. It gets put in post, but I just can't get it out of my head now. So the assignment is quite simple. We're passing it around the team at the moment. I had the last assignment as given to me by Andrew to see Inland Empire, which was frustratingly 3 hours of my life I'll never get back and don't ever want to have to sit through that big pile of stinking shit ever again. And then I passed it on to Adam, and Adam it probably hasn't come across on the podcast all that much, but definitely in private conversation, not a fan of the musical, the theatrical cinema musical, and I passed on to him one of my favourite musicals of all time, which is the original movie version of the Broadway hit Annie, based on the stories of Orphan Annie. And how did you find it, Mr. Stolfo?
Just tell me when the time starts, Brose, and I'll let you know.
Adam has 60 seconds to say largely positive things about what is an absolutely fantastic film. And Adam, your time starts now.
The biggest surprise I'm going to give you all right off the bat is the fact that there's one thing I did at the very start of this exercise which made this exercise really pleasurable for me, Brose, and that's took myself back to when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, because I actually
Were you in a sleeping bag with Michael at the time? Or?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
This film, I actually enjoyed it very thoroughly, but I took myself back in time in order to do that. It was full of very, very likeable characters, Brose. Annie was very, very cute. The singing was quite phenomenal in this film. I actually, it's a hard luck life. Sorry, what's it called?
It's a hard knock life.
Hard knock life. Like that's just a song that's ingrained in all our heads. But some of the other ones were just as catchy as well. I actually, the characters were incredibly charismatic, and I was swept up in the emotion of what the film was trying to do.
Oh.
Andrew summed it up perfectly when he said that this film's like eating 10 spoonfuls of sugar. And I love sugar. It's probably my biggest weakness. So I lapped that up in droves. This film surprised me. I went in with a very open mind. I was worried because, as everyone knows, I'm not a fan of musicals.
You're well over time, but I just love hearing you talk about this film. So I'm just going to let you keep going.
Isn't there some beeper or something?
Yeah, hang on a minute. That's got to be 60
Oh, it's
seconds.
well over. It's well over, but I'm loving it. Keep going. Keep telling me how great this film is that I love.
Yeah.
He's going to burst into song in a sec.
Tomorrow. Sorry.
We're going to do a duet. Michael and I are going to do a duet.
Not necessary. What about
live performance?
It's it has had some critical reception, this film, and the adaptation. Albert Finney's singing, for example, is absolutely disgusting and horrible.
Yeah.
But are there any negative things you want to balance that out with? Or?
Look, Yeah, but you know what? I'm really not going to get into that. And really, just because of the fact that I'm not really, as you know, I'm just not a big fan of musicals, full stop, and I'm still not. But I just went in with a very...
I'm not saying you have to be.
No, but I just went in with a very, very open mind. And as I said, I used to love watching films like The Wizard of Oz and Sound of Music and these films when I was about that old. And I really just took myself back and just put myself into that frame of mind. And I actually got a lot out of this.
You got a lot out of it. Sometimes you got to do that too.
I'm going to give it a review.
Oh, yeah, how many stars?
3.
3 out of 5.
Which is a good movie.
That's pretty good.
Would you recommend it, Adam?
Yes.
Oh. Yes, with a pause. I was always...
yeah. Look, I could get into the problems, but I'm not going to do that.
And everybody loves Punjab, one of the most racially insensitive characters in the history.
Which is hilarious.
But he is hilarious.
It was great.
He's a brilliant mystic.
Should have mentioned under 60 seconds.
Tim Curry, by the way, sensational.
Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
He's so good. He's so good.
Yeah, Tim Curry's good in anything.
No, he's not. He's really not.
No, he is. Adam knows because they watched this film in a sleeping bag together. So
how was that, Brose? Your assignment did work dividends.
Absolutely, and that's the point of the assignment. It's not about torturing someone. It's about getting people to get out of their comfort zone and watch something they wouldn't normally watch and find something positive and find some enjoyment in it.
So what's next?
It's now time to pass the assignment, Mr. Stolfo, across to... Well, one of only two members that haven't had it yet. It's Michael's turn.
Starting to sweat.
Mr. Michael Hadjion.
You're sweating like the T800.
Sweating like the T800 bung eye.
Now...
Sorry. Do go on with this assignment.
Okay. Now, if there's one thing that I know that stops Michael from going to see a film, particularly at the cinema, is... something that you've really grown accustomed to over the years. You're talking about a good action film like The Terminator, right? Well, what about a bad action film? Like, what about the Commando-esque like action films, like the ones that the redeeming features? There's not much in the story.
Like 7 Too Many Fast and Furiouses, or Transformers 4, or
Yeah, well, there's one
just Transformers 4?
Oh, and 3 and 2.
I was worried for a second. That was your jump-off point?
4 took it too far.
I haven't actually seen Transformers
until
4.
that point.
And I also know that over the years we've watched many a video game movie together as well.
Is there anything better in the history of cinema than video games that are adapted into movies? What a great idea! Right? It gets better.
I don't like the way this is going.
Well, I just had to go one step further than that. How many great action films are based on board games?
Clue doesn't count as an action film.
Oh, okay, all right.
I see where this is going.
I've got nothing.
Can you see this coming?
Hold on, board game.
You sunk my battleship.
Oh no! I did not see that one coming. I have not seen it. Fortunately, yeah.
Well, look, you are sometimes, over time, you've become a little bit adverse to the brainless action movie, particularly with source material such as this. Finding little reason to go see them, let alone...
I can't stand this stuff. The triple X's and the, I don't know, it's forgettable, mindless stuff.
Well, you're going to go watch Rihanna in Battleship, and you're going to come back...
Rihanna's in it.
Oh, wow, things are turning out.
We've already got 1 minute of good material.
This is not so bad. 1 minute... We'll be seeing Hadj next time talking about Rihanna for a minute. That's what you're saying.
So you're going to be coming back to Real Chat and giving us 1 minute of everything that's good about the recent film, Battleship.
All right, bring it on. Look, it could have been a lot worse, so no, I'll take it. And I'll work with it.
There you go, bro.
There we go. Wow, that assignment will be returning soon to Real Chat. Michael Hadjion giving his full report.
There we go. So
fantastic.
Yeah, so that pretty much wraps it up, guys. Thanks for coming out and discussing Terminator. And next episode, we're going to be looking at Jurassic Park 3.
Woo!
Which Stu can't wait for. So, thanks very much, guys. Thanks for coming out, and we will speak to you guys soon.
See you later.
Thanks a lot. See you later. Yeah.
Stay in touch with us by visiting realchat.com.au. Check us out on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at RealChatPodcast, Instagram real_chat_podcast. And if you haven't already, catch up with past episodes and subscribe to new episodes on iTunes.